Chapter 4501. Bang Bang. Bang Bang. Unable to catch up with Yi Qian, the Jestan extremists who had lost their target fired 3 shots into the sky to warn their accomplices. The originally calm night was now in chaos. Weaving Sparrow and Bai He pressed their ears against the iron door, holding their breaths as they listened to the chaos outside. Gunshots, footsteps, and roars. It seemed like they were chasing something. The 2 people who were leaning against the door exchanged a look. Something happened outside. Probably on Qing Niao's side. Weaving Sparrow said in a low voice that only Bai He could hear. If it's really on Qing Niao's side, we won't be able to hold our ground for long. Prepare early. Bai He nodded and looked back at the Jestan villagers who were all alarmed. His gaze fell on a corner, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Weaving Sparrow's gaze swept to the same corner almost at the same time. She said softly and coldly, "We have to find the criminals here. I'm a little suspicious." She glanced at the corner and said, "Be careful. If there's really a problem, even if they're Jestan villagers, we have to deal with them directly." The last sentence was a little cruel. Bai He was slightly relieved. He also suspected this couple, and so did his comrade. Both of them had the same intuition, so the possibility was more than half. It was getting more and more chaotic outside. They couldn't find Yi Qian, and when they returned, they found Anner and Carrie Aji dead. The girls who were originally imprisoned had all escaped. Their escape made the Jestan extremists completely furious. "Catch that Chinese woman and kill her. You must kill her. Don't let her go. She must not have run far. You must find her. Don't let her escape back to China. Search, search, search." In a small village on the border of Jestan, where there was insufficient electricity, countless flashlights flashed across the night sky. G3, who was crawling on the hillside around the village, put away his binoculars and slowly slid down. 3 hours ago, the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces secretly entered Jestan and silently killed nearly 15 Jestan outlaws on the front line. They arrived near the village 5 minutes ago and just happened to hear Yi Qian's gunshot at Anner. G3 slid down the slope and said to Xia Jinyuan, "Qing Niao and the other 2 are probably already on the move. The gunshots are a little chaotic." Han Zheng stared at the GPS and frowned. He said uncertainly, "The GPS doesn't move. It's hard to tell." Xia Jinyuan glanced at the stationary GPS and climbed up the hillside like a cheetah. He raised his night vision binoculars to observe. 5 minutes ago, there were countless beams of light flashing in the dark village. Judging from the number of extremists running around, Xia Jinyuan narrowed his eyes and quickly slid down the slope. A fierce battle had just ended last night, and in less than 24 hours, the Special Forces would face another fierce battle. It was also the first time that the trainees of the second battle went overseas to fight. Seal all the entrances and exits of the village. Block all the escape routes. The rest of the people will take advantage of the chaos to sneak in. Kill whoever you see. Robbing a burning house will be more effective, and we can quickly determine who is a bandit and who is a citizen. He paused for a moment and said to the trainees who had a faint smell of blood, "We veterans are better at cutting throats from the back. If we go in now, we can clean up everything along the way. You guys did a good job last night. I'll leave the deep cleaning to you tonight. What do you think?" The trainees who had carried out 2 missions in a row all nodded, indicating that there was no problem. A trainee raised his question, "We are now fighting in another country. Q King, aren't you worried that our whereabouts will be exposed and the border of Jestan will be alerted?" Chapter 4502. Xia Jinyuan said calmly, "Turn on the high-power screen. All wireless signals within a 10-kilometer radius are blocked, including satellite signals. Also, our troops are guarding all the entrances and exits of the village. Not even a fly can fly out. You've also changed your rifles. All the bullets are NATO-made. Other than your camouflage uniforms, you can't find any evidence that you're Chinese soldiers. Do you think you'll be exposed with such a deployment? Since they were sneaking into another country to carry out a rescue mission, they naturally had to disguise themselves well. Z7 Hanjing said, "There's no problem on my side. I've already turned on the high-power coverage. All satellite signals have been intercepted. I'll guard an opening. Not even a mosquito can fly out from under my nose. If one comes out, I'll kill one. If a pair comes out, I'll kill a pair. No one can escape from under my nose." Z7, who was buried in his work, smiled and said ruthlessly. G3 smiled and said to the trainees, "There won't be any problems here. You just need to think about returning home alive. You've trained for more than 2 years and performed well last night. You'll definitely be able to return home alive. Don't worry and take care of those people who still want to destroy the peace of our country." T6, who had been talking to the university students with a smile all the way, changed his temperament when he said those ruthless words. He wasn't a university student. He was clearly a laughing llama. Sniper E6 looked at the veterans and then at the trainees. He said slowly, "I'll guard an opening. With one word, the bastards inside won't be able to escape." E6 was a man from the northwest. He was very good at flying helicopters. His eyebrows were very thick. There was a scar at the end of his left eyebrow. Not only did this not destroy the heroic spirit of his thick eyebrows, but it also added a hint of unruly handsomeness. Huddled in a corner, he suddenly spoke, causing the heart of a Special Forces trainee who was closest to him to tighten. As a sniper, E6 wasn't used to talking too much outside. Once he didn't speak, he was even more invisible than K7, who also didn't talk much. Basically, if he didn't speak, no one would notice that there was such a person beside him. The highest level of concealment for a sniper was about his level. Therefore, when he suddenly spoke, the trainee was so scared that his heart skipped a beat. E6 saw that the trainee closest to him, who was about to become his comrade, was shocked. He even apologized in embarrassment. "Sorry, I suddenly wanted to express my opinion. I couldn't help it." "Oh, okay, it's fine." The intern soldier did not expect this, and did not know how to respond for a moment. He replied dryly and looked a little embarrassed. E6's facial features belonged to the ordinary category. His lines were well defined, and he leaned towards the category of a tough guy. He had the typical bravery of a man from the northwest who was not afraid of death. After he finished speaking, he hid in the shadows again. His entire being merged with the mountains and rocks, making the trainee's heart tighten again. The veterans in the team were all awesome people. When they arrived at the battle deployment area, Xia Jinyuan divided the 13 veterans into different teams. 4 veterans would guard several entrances, while the rest would enter the village and find a commanding height to guard. 30 new recruits entered the village in Kyrgyzstan. After completing this foreign mission, they would become real special forces of the Snowfield Brigade. There were dogs in the village, and the barking of the dogs added a bit of tension to the already restless village. A few dark alleys swept out from the ravines, heading towards the village at the fastest speed. The veterans of the Snowfield Brigade were the first to move out, followed by the trainees. This time, they did not open the way with rifles like last night. Instead, they used pistols with silencers and combat daggers to open the way. It was better to be low-key when sneaking into another country to fight. They chose to engage in close combat, and at the same time, the danger level rose sharply. There was no guarantee that there would be a sneak attack from behind. Chapter 4503. This was the first time the trainees went abroad for a mission. They had brushed shoulders with death several times last night. Although they had some experience, it would be a lie to say that they weren't nervous and afraid when faced with an overseas mission where they were likely to die. Nervousness and fear were the most normal reactions in the face of danger. No one could escape from them. What they had to do was to overcome their nervousness and fear and complete every mission with the most fearless attitude. The night was not calm. Footsteps were everywhere, indicating that this small village in Jeston was destined to not be peaceful. GK and Bai He, who were still imprisoned, also knew what was happening outside. As expected, Qing Niao escaped with 5 Jeston girls. It was definitely not a problem for one person to escape, but it was difficult to escape with 5 girls. They had to go out to support Qing Niao. Bai He whispered her plan to the middle-aged Jeston man who helped them escape. At the same time, she also told him her suspicions. However, the Jeston man was so scared that he clutched his chest and exclaimed, "No, no, how is it possible? Did you suspect wrongly?" There was the sound of someone falling to the ground outside. GK jumped up and pressed against the iron door. She raised her hand and knocked rhythmically. Yi Qian heard the sound and immediately knocked back. They finally found the place. Bai He said to the Jeston man who knew a little Chinese, "Then, can you let the 2 of them lead the way for us?" Yi Qian, who received a response from her comrades, dragged the guard to the side. She didn't waste any time since she couldn't find the key. She first picked up the guard's imitation rifle and slung the rifle she had previously snatched over her shoulder. Then, she aimed the rifle at the iron door. Bang! 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 3 bullets hit the iron lock and sparks flew. Since it was already chaotic, why not make it more chaotic? The village was so big. With their skills, they could definitely escape. The iron lock fell and the iron door was kicked open by Yi Qian. At the same time, she threw the rifle inside. Be gentle, be gentle. It almost hit my head." GK came out and caught the black shadow. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and immediately reached out to grab it. Otherwise, she would have been hit by the gun. It was a little embarrassing for someone who played with guns all day to be hit by a gun. The villagers inside were all shocked by the scene before them. A Chinese girl came in with a gun. Was the chaos outside because of this Chinese girl? It was too sudden. Everyone was stunned. The couple who had been huddling in the corner and grieving for their children raised their heads, as if they could not believe what was happening in front of them. The middle-aged man from Kaistan, who could speak Mandarin, immediately shouted at the 4 Chinese border herdsmen, "Run! Run! Run! Follow them! They could run now. Hurry up and run! The further they ran, the better. They must not look back." At this moment, the couple in the corner looked at each other. As if they had thought of something, they suddenly stood up and rushed over while crying loudly. Yi Qian and Weaving Sparrow didn't understand what the couple was crying about, but the White Crane did. He secretly exchanged glances with the middle-aged man from Jeston. The couple cried and said that they wanted to leave together. They wanted to go out and find their children. They begged Weaving Sparrow and the others to take them with them. "Take them with you, take them with you. It'll help them escape faster. Shamask can run faster with them. They can escape together." Chapter 4504. The begging of the couple softened the hearts of the other villagers. They felt that they could indeed escape together. They even thought that if they were accidentally caught, the Shamask couple would be able to stand up and stop the violence outside. At this point, Weaving Sparrow and White Crane were completely certain that their suspicions were not wrong. The Shamask couple had already betrayed them. Weaving Sparrow said to Yi Qian, who did not know the situation, "There's something wrong with the 2 of them. They sneaked in to instigate a rebellion. Then bring them along." Hearing this, Yi Qian did not hesitate and directly said to White Crane, "Bring them along. We'll deal with them outside." Fortunately, he held back and did not immediately say that he had saved a few Geestan girls. So cruel. Weaving Sparrow laughed, her laughter containing the same cruelty. White Crane raised her eyebrows. Every time she worked with Qing Niao, it was very satisfying. Qing Niao on the battlefield did not have the sensibility of women. What she had was all rationality. She could even distinguish the pros and cons better than the male soldiers. Bringing the Shamask couple was indeed a good idea. The middle-aged man from Geestan who could speak Chinese closed his eyes and nodded in agreement. If Shamask was really in cahoots with the people outside who had killed the villagers' relatives, then it was impossible to leave the couple in the village. No matter which country it was, the people of any country hated lawbreakers who destroyed peace. The villagers of Geestan also hated them. When the Shamask couple saw this, their eyes flashed and they secretly smiled. They had invited the others to escape with them, but they had been rejected. Go. Take them away. Shamask, you have to take them away from here. Allah will bless you to leave safely. After making a decision, the middle-aged man from Geestan urged the 5 of them to leave quickly and reached out to push them out of the small house. Follow them, don't look back. We'll be fine. Those guys still needed to stay in the village, so they would be fine. It was safer to stay here. The 5 of them were pushed out of the small house, leaving the Geestan villagers holding each other's hands tightly, using each other's strength to ease their tension. They will definitely leave, right? Allah will bless them to leave safely, right? The kind woman whispered, clasping her hands and praying. This way, go. In front, Shamask and his wife crouched as they led the way, urging the 3 people behind them to follow closely. They were not heading in the direction of Zongshanshan. The 3 of them had a strong sense of direction, so how could they not know the couple's intentions? They didn't expose them and allowed them to lead the way. How could one catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Since Captain Xia and the others had already come over, they would attack from the outside while the 3 of them would attack from the inside. They would attack from the front and back and complete the cleanup. The bullets in the replica rifle had already been loaded and could be fired at any time. The 3 of them were dressed casually. Aside from the rifle in their hands, they had no other equipment. They didn't even have a bulletproof vest. They had to rely on their courage to penetrate deep into the enemy's camp. Shamask and his wife saw that the 3 people behind them were obediently following them. Their strides became bigger and faster. The 3 of them had guns in their hands, but the 2 of them didn't. They had to hand it over to the leader as soon as possible. Amidst the twists and turns, Yi Qian suddenly saw a black streak pass by his left side. It was so fast that he couldn't tell which comrade it was. Chapter 4505. The black shadows that passed by also noticed the figures that were flying away in front of them. The 3 Special Forces soldiers in the dark corner quickly made hand signals. After confirming the plan, the 3 of them disappeared like ghosts and headed in the direction where Yi Jian and the others were flying. The barking of the dogs could still be heard throughout the village, and the sound of footsteps was sometimes close and sometimes far away. Torchlight beams occasionally flashed across the night sky and shone into every dark corner along with the noisy voices of the people. Gunshots came from the other side. It came from the direction where Weaver Sparrow and Bai He had been imprisoned. The criminals who were searching the area discovered that the other 2 prisoners had escaped. They had no choice but to fire a warning shot. At this point, the smarter ones knew that the 3 prisoners had not escaped. Everyone's focus was on catching the 3 escapees. As for the Kaistan girls rescued by Yi Qian, that was not the main point. Their parents were still there. They could not have escaped far. The night was even more chaotic. Stray bullets occasionally came, causing the small village of Kaistan, which was very close to the Chinese border, to be enveloped in a tense atmosphere. The 3 Special Forces soldiers, who Xia Jinyuan continued to call trainees, stuck close to the wall. They took deep breath. It was their turn to make a move. It was 3 against 5. They had to cut the waist first before making a move. Shamask and his wife were about to complete their mission. When they reached a corner, the 2 of them instantly dashed out like rabbits and disappeared. Yi Jian and the other 2, who had not followed closely, heard the couple shouting loudly as they disappeared. As for what they were shouting, Bai He sneered at his comrades and said, "They're calling for reinforcements. Brothers, the battle has begun." Before Zhike and Yi Jian could say anything, 3 black shadows with fierce auras suddenly attacked. Zhike muttered, F***CK. She moved her feet and leaned to the left, narrowly avoiding the dagger that was coming from behind. Yi Qian grabbed the strong arm holding the dagger with one hand and said with a smile, "We're on the same side. Codename Qing Miao. You must be trainees in the team." When the flood rushed into the Dragon King Temple, he ran into his own people. As for Qing Miao, although more than 2 years had passed, the impression she had left on them was too deep. She had crushed them, who had just joined the Snowfield Brigade for half a year, to the point that they had never forgotten her and had always remembered her. The Special Forces soldier who assassinated Yi Qian was none other than Number 16, who had issued a challenge to Yi Qian back then. His code name was still Number 16, and it had never changed. Hearing the familiar code name, and the slightly unfamiliar but slightly familiar female voice, Number 16's face suddenly tensed up and he immediately withdrew his arm. It was too dangerous. He had used a killing move to stab her just now. If she hadn't dodged it, Qing Miao would have been seriously injured even if she didn't die. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and fortunately she was very skilled. Number 16 thought with lingering fear as he withdrew his dagger. The one who had tried to assassinate Weaver Sparrow was Number 18. He and Number 16 had been working together ever since they were recruits, so they had developed a tacit understanding. He had retracted his weapon earlier than Number 16. Weaver Sparrow said, F***CK, and he knew that he had bumped into one of his own. Only by he wasn't stopped. Before Number 26 could make a move, by he had rushed out to finish off the Shamask couple. The Shamask couple yelled at the top of their lungs for a while before by he finished them off. The way he finished them was very cruel. He twisted their neck. Their cervical vertebrae were broken, and only a little bit of air was left. By the time by he turned around, the air was gone. Chapter 4506. Fighting in a foreign country had to be done quickly, not to mention that night raids were the strength of the Snowfield Brigade's special forces. GK smiled at Number 18. Not bad, Q King is still the best. You've improved so quickly in the past few months that Qing Miao and I didn't even notice the three of you approaching. It was true. Yi Qian had seen a black shadow earlier. Although she knew it must be her comrades, she didn't expect them to discover her, GK and Bai He. They even took the opportunity to sneak over. Their skills were good and they were also very hidden. However, Captain Xia had clearly told her that the trainees were about to carry out a mission and needed to be brought to the border for training before that. Now that they were directly involved, Captain Xia was actually not worried? Soon, Yi Qian knew why Xia Jinyuan suddenly let the trainees carry out a mission. Their reaction, speed, and mobility were all first class. What she didn't know was that the trainees had already received support in China. The shouts of the Shamask couple alerted the nearby outlaws, especially the leader who had been hiding in the depth. Hearing the shouts outside, the leader first scolded the Shamask couple for their stupidity, then immediately sent people to deal with the 3 Chinese who had sneaked over to his side. Number 18, who was hiding in a corner, reported their situation to all her comrades through the public channel. When the Snowfield Brigade's special forces learned that the 3 of them had encountered GK, Bai He and Qing Miao, they all smiled. Their luck was good. They didn't have to deliberately look for the 3 hijacked comrades. Xia Jinyuan signaled Number 26 to pass the wireless communicator to Yi Qian. He needed to say a few words to Yi Qian, even if it was just listening to his voice. The fierce battle started directly in the middle of the village at the border of Kistan. Bai He fired the first shot. Even though he was holding an imitation AK rifle, his accuracy allowed him to hit an outlaw in the head with his first shot. It was a good start. Yi Qian took the communicator from the 2 sides in the first wave of gunfire. I'm Qing Miao. His clear voice entered Xia Jinyuan's ears, as well as the ears of all his comrades. When Xia Jinyuan heard the familiar voice, a faint smile appeared on his cold face. After sneaking into the village, there was a certain distance between him and Yi Qian. He could not go over and could only communicate with him through communication. He smiled and said, "Fight well, don't be too polite." "I don't intend to be courteous. I've already dealt with 2 of them. We still need to send a few brothers over. Thanks to a criminal couple, we accidentally found their leader here. Firepower." While they were talking, number 26, who was guarding Yi Qian's rear, killed 2 criminals who had rushed in from behind. His back was pressed against Yi Qian's, and Yi Qian could clearly feel the tension in his back. It was the first time that number 26 carried out an overseas mission, so he was a little nervous. Although he was nervous, his hands holding the gun were very steady, unlike Yi Qian, when he was on his first mission to kill the enemy. His arms were trembling after he fired the gun. "Well done." Yi Qian smiled and said to number 26. Then he said to Xia Jinyuan, "I saved 5 Kistan girls here. Zhang Bei is in the sheep pen, so I have to send some brothers to protect them. Bei Bei is in the sheep pen, we'll be there soon." A slightly unfamiliar voice came. Yi Qian knew that this was also an intern in the team. Captain Xia was really too bold. Why did the boss agree to let 30 interns sneak into other countries to fight? 30 interns and 16 veterans, a total of 46 people sneaked into a small village at the border of Kistan. Yi Qian inexplicably thought of the word bloodbath. Chapter 4507. Yi Qian suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. There are indeed many extremists in the village, but not all of them. "Q King, we can't. Don't worry, we won't." Xia Jinyuan guessed what she wanted to say. He smiled and said, "Let's clean up these guys and leave immediately. This is foreign territory, we can't be too arrogant." Yi Qian pursed her lips and smiled. "That's right, I'm thinking too much." The gunshots started to become more frequent. Yi Qian felt number 20's back tensing up, so she ended the call. Before she hung up, Xia Jinyuan whispered, "You're a veteran, let them learn from you." In other words, he reminded Qing Niao to take care of the Special Forces soldiers who went abroad for the first time. In fact, even without Xia Jinyuan's reminder, Yi Qian would take care of them. As the gunshots became more frequent, Yi Qian, who was shooting 2 targets in a row, leaned against the corner of the wall and said to number 26, "The leader is in this area. The 3 of you guard the perimeter. Weaver Sparrow, Baiha, and I will go in and clean up. Can the 3 of you fight separately? It's a 3-way junction, one person has to guard one path." "Yes." Number 26, who was covering Yi Qian's back, replied calmly, "Leave it to us, no problem." "Okay." Yi Qian didn't hesitate. She didn't have much time to doubt whether her comrades could defend the perimeter. Since Captain Xia allowed them to carry out the mission, she believed in him. Gunshots came from the center of the area. The Kistan extremists, who were still searching, felt their hearts skip a beat. They quickly realized that the gunshots must have been caused by the 3 escaping Chinese nationals. Realizing that the gunshots were caused by the 3 escaping Chinese nationals, the scattered outlaws started to run in the same direction and shouted loudly, "Quick, go to the front. They must be there. Don't let them escape again. Go and surround them." They ran in the same direction, which made it easier for the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces soldiers who were hiding and secretly taking care of several targets. He no longer stealthily tried to assassinate them. Instead, he found a shooting spot and set up his rifle to shoot at the black figure who was running with a gun. The Snowfield Brigade Special Forces would never be soft-hearted when faced with criminals who destroyed the peace at the border and even threatened to destroy the peace at the border of our country. The sudden gunshots from several points in the village stunned the running outlaws. What's going on? What happened? Why were there gunshots in several places? Something is wrong, something is wrong. Quickly inform the chief that soldiers have infiltrated our village. This way, they're shooting from here. The village became even more chaotic. The outlaws who thought that the village was surrounded by their own forces began to flee. In the process of escaping, A few criminals discovered that their companions had been secretly killed and realized that the situation was very unfavorable for them. The fierce battle began, and the bullets that were shot out left trails of sparks in the darkness, flying in all directions. Some people were shot to death, some fell to the ground and struggled in pain, and some even raised their guns to fight back in the darkness. Bang bang! Bang bang! Bang bang! The gunshots were no longer sporadic, and they were so dense that it seemed like gunshots were coming from every corner. The bullets hit the wall, and the bullets sank deep into the ground and splashed up a lot of dust. The dust got into their eyes, and they didn't even dare to blink, for fear that they would lose their position if they blinked. After learning that there was still a chief, Xia Jinyuan adjusted the battle plan. He took 3 veterans and sneaked directly into the center of the village, where Yi Qian was located. It was also the place where the firepower on the entire battlefield was the most concentrated and the fiercest. He had to bring reinforcements. After dealing with the chief in the village, he would immediately retreat with his troops and return to China. Chapter 4508. The trainees, who had entered the battlefield, had no time to be afraid. They raised the rifle in their hands and pulled the trigger again and again. Reload, cover them. Pincer, attack. Cover the rear. Roger. Advance. Left side, attack. Roger. Fire from the front and back. Advance quickly. Once on the battlefield, there was no way out. They began to use all the skills they had learned during training to fight for their lives and for victory. There was no turning back. There was only one path in front of them: fight. How many people had fought in the past? The troops had been gathered on the battlefield. The war drums had been beaten. Even if no one returned, they would still fight. The bullets with the aura of the Grim Reaper pierced through the air and brushed past their heads with long fiery tails. The tip of their noses seemed to smell the smoke of gunpowder. Lay down, and shoot. The entire tactical movement was smooth and fierce. The Special Forces soldiers who had gone overseas for the first time experienced the rapid heartbeat of the Grim Reaper whistling past their ears. Their palms were sweaty under their fingerless glove. As for their bodies, their sweat had already soaked their helmet. Their entire bodies were almost drenched. Lying down on the dusty ground, they couldn't even raise their heads due to the counterfire from the front. The trainee with the code name 26 lowered his head tightly. The tall tip of his nose was pressed against the ground. Dust choked his throat and eyes as he breathed. Lie down, don't raise your head. Qing Niao's clear voice came from beside him. It was very steady and there was no sign of panic. It was as if they weren't facing a hail of bullets, but blanks that were used in training and had no lethality within a certain range. She was too calm. So calm that she was no different from a veteran who had experienced hundreds of battles. Feeling the hot bullet graze past his body, 26 wanted to ask her if she was not afraid at all because she often carried out similar missions. If he remembered correctly, Qing Niao was still a first-year military school student when she killed 30 of their male soldiers. Calculating the time, she was still a military school student now. As a military school student, how could she be so calm in the face of bullets that grazed past her head? Lowering his head, number 26 revealed a bitter smile as his thoughts ran wild. He felt that he needed to find something to think about. Otherwise, listening to the sound of live ammunition, he felt a little scared. He thought about going to the battlefield every day and fighting a real enemy. He thought that he would be a hero on the battlefield. He thought about it every day, even in his dreams. But when he actually went to the battlefield, he realized that the so-called hero's dream was just a daydream that he had the energy to daydream. There were no dreams of becoming a hero on the battlefield. Instead, there were only thoughts of how to defeat the enemy and how to return alive. Now, he finally understood why the captain had said that these trainees, who had never been on the battlefield and had never killed an enemy, were not qualified to call him captain. Only Bing, who had truly been on the battlefield, would know how difficult it was to survive. The firepower was still fierce. It was so fierce that Yi Qian, GK, and Bai He were motionless after being hit by the concentrated bullet. GK and Bai He were together. Behind them were the two trainees, 18 and 16. Yi Qian and 26 were on the other side of GK and Bai He. The three groups of people formed a triangular formation. 18 and 16 were guarding the two entrances. When they noticed the criminals coming from behind, they raised the rifles in their hands and fired a round of bullets at the black shadows. Suddenly, there were several muffled sounds of people falling to the ground. 3 of the advancing black shadows fell, and a few of them hurriedly dodged to the corner and then raised their guns to fight back. Chapter 4509. The two of them brought up the rear. Both number 26 and Yi Qian, who were responsible for the other point, were pinned down by the 2 firing points in front of them. If they didn't move, GK and Bai He, who were already deep in the fire, would be in danger. Yi Qian tightened his grip on the replica rifle and whispered to the motionless number 26, "We have to take care of the 2 firing points in one direction. Cover me. I'll count to 3. You fire blindly at the 2 firing points in one direction. Remember, don't look up. Fire blindly the whole time." Hearing this, number 20's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't raise his head easily. He lowered his voice and said, "The bullets are so dense. How can we charge through? Charging out like this is no different from suicide." He thought to himself, but he didn't dare say it out loud. Yi Qian smiled and said casually, "That's why we need your suppressive fire. You have a Type 95 automatic rifle. Its continuous fire performance is not bad. You'll suppress it and I'll leap forward." Yi Qian's battle plan made number 26 even more nervous. Qing Niao leaped forward, and he'll suppress it. Gripping the rifle tightly, number 26 felt his throat was unbearably dry. "But I have to ask you, do you have the confidence to suppress it? I won't have time to fire when I'm leaping forward. It's all thanks to your help. Do you have the confidence?" Yi Qian asked again. Even though it was a question, his tone was full of trust. "Do I have the confidence? Yes. Of course I do." Number 26 gritted his teeth and answered in a low voice, "I have no problem. Leave it to me." "Okay. 1, 2, 3. As soon as the 3 shouts were heard, Yi Jian leaped forward like a spring that was struggling to break free from its restraints. Number 20's firepower was suppressing him. Throughout the whole process, he had been shooting blindly. Not only had he lured the enemy's firepower to his side, but he had also used the bullets that he kept firing to force the enemy in front of him to stay low. Yi Qian leaped forward 3 times in the gaps between the enemy's bullet. It was so dangerous that a stray bullet brushed past his arm and entered the firing point that she had her eyes on. Number 26 finished shooting. The front line fired directly at the angle where number 26 was crouching. Bang bang, bang bang, the dense bullets left grooves in the corners of the earthen wall. In less than a minute, a bowl-sized hole was created. A thick layer of dust had already covered 20's body. About 2 minutes later, number 26 clearly felt that the firepower in one direction had weakened. It was so weak that he could raise his head and change his shooting position. The voice of the comrade codenamed 17 came from the microphone. "How's the situation over there?" Switching to his personal communication channel, he rushed from the corner of the wall to the location that Qing Niao had pointed out. Panting heavily, he finally had the time to reply, "The situation isn't good. It seems that we've found the center of the nest, where the firepower is the strongest. Just now." He took a deep breath and wiped the sweat from his eyes. His voice was so dry that it seemed to carry the smell of gunpowder. "Qing Niao attacked just now and killed 2 firepower points in 2 minutes. That's how I was able to get away." Number 26 smiled bitterly. "Brother, the battlefield is not a joke. You can lose your life just like that. When I fired the first bullet, my hands were shaking. Same to you. My F***king hands are still shaking. Just now, phew. Number 17 breathed heavily. He had just finished a fierce battle. At this moment, he was only 5 feet away from the corpse of a criminal that he had killed. In addition to the thick gunpowder smoke, he could also smell the stench of blood and rust that made his stomach churn. 19 and I just killed 3 Keistan criminals. Now the 2 of us are crouching next to the bodies. Chapter 45:10. It was easy to imagine the psychological pressure of staying with a criminal who had been killed. Number 19's elbow was in a pool of blood. The blood seeped through the camouflage fabric, and number 19 could feel how thick and sticky the blood was. The 30 trainees who entered the village each had their own battle positions. They completed the encirclement and provided cover and support for their comrades who were fighting in the depth of the village. Number 26, number 18, and number 16 were guarding the battlefield where the firepower was the most concentrated. Xia Jinyuan, who led the troops to support him, charged forward with a grim face. The 3 trainees who were fighting with him felt their hearts beating like drums. The more they fought, the braver they became. The more they fought, the less afraid they were before. Number 18, position. His voice was cold and sharp through the earpiece, and number 18 immediately responded and told him the position. How are the other 3 doing? Xia Jinyuan asked again. He had no way of contacting Yi Qian, Bai He and GK, so he could only get the information from number 18 and the other 2. Number 26 replied. Qing Niao took care of 2 firing points and covered GK and Bai He to fight in the depth of the village. Number 18, number 16, and I will cover the rear. Although the firepower is concentrated, it's all within a controllable range. Knowing that it was their first time fighting abroad, Yi Qian and the other 2 didn't dare to let them attack together. They only needed to guard the rear and not let the 3 of them fall behind, which would give the criminals an opportunity to attack. Xia Jinyuan looked in the direction and felt a little relieved. It wasn't far away. Gunshots kept echoing in the sky. The experienced veterans of the Snowfield Brigade slowly gathered all the criminals in one direction, away from the safe area. Mobile warfare in another country was a big deal, especially when it was done without the knowledge of the other country. It had to be solved as soon as possible. Xia Jinyuan, G3, and K7 came from the left while the trainees attacked from the right. They went straight for the mud house where the leader was, who hadn't shown up yet. Inside the mud house, the leader, who was about 40 years old, was wearing a small black hat and a local traditional costume. He was sitting on a luxurious woolen carpet with his eyes closed as he listened to the gunshots outside. There was no panic on his face. He kept mumbling, but no one knew what he was talking about. The outlaw in front of him, who was also wearing the traditional attire of Kistian, was also mumbling. When the gunshots became more and more intense, the leader raised his hand. His voice sounded like it came from a cold and gloomy old well. "Go, our brave warriors!" The 2 kneeling men prostrated themselves once again, as if they had just completed some kind of baptism. It was clearly a solemn movement, but it carried a chilling hostility. As they got up, red dots flashed in their wide traditional clothes. Those were suicide bombs. The 2 of them got up and walked out. They didn't walk outside but instead walked towards a flat-roofed house. They went in and didn't come out again. This was an earthen house with a pointed roof and a dome. Although the walls were mottled and full of holes, it was the largest private house in the entire village. There were also high earthen walls around it. People outside couldn't see inside, and people inside couldn't see outside either. There were people guarding all 4 walls. Because they occupied the high walls, Yi Qian and the rest were having a hard time with their attack. They couldn't break through after a few strong attacks. Now that reinforcements had arrived, the 3 of them could temporarily retreat. "Let's take a break. Our brothers are here." GK knelt beside Yi Qian. He was sweating profusely. He was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, so his arms were sweaty too. However, the more he wiped, the more sweat there was. In the end, he lifted his shirt to reveal his muscular waist and wiped the sweat away. Chapter 45:11. With the cover of the night, Yi Qian couldn't see anything. He wiped his clothes until they were covered in sweat. After wiping them off, he continued to lie down and waited for Bai He to come over. As the two of them whispered, the White Crane's voice came from outside. Then, 2 rifles were thrown from the other side of the wall. The two of them who had been staring at the wall and waiting for the White Crane to come saw the shape of the rifle clearly under the hazy starlight. The two of them rushed out and caught the rifle. They threw the rifles over the wall and 2 backpacks, tactical vests, and wireless communicators. The 2 men took the rifles and held the backpacks tightly. Without saying anything, they quickly organized their equipment. When Bai He climbed over the wall, the 2 men were still organizing their equipment. Our target position is high up. The firepower is strong. We'll launch a direct attack. Bai He didn't even have time to catch his breath. He first told the 2 men about the situation outside. We'll attack the back door and take out the leader at the front. Then we'll retreat immediately. Yi Qian, who had put on his wireless communicator and was adjusting the channel, said, "It's been half an hour. The gunshots are loud. I'm afraid the Kaistan border guards will be alerted." "Yes, let's finish it quickly." After Bai He said that, the gunshots outside seemed to be more intense. According to the battle time, it should be finished within an hour. Now that half an hour had passed, it was time to wrap up and retreat. More and more outlaws were killed, and blood stained the dusty ground in several places. Their swift footsteps left deep and large footprints. "Someone's coming out." When the veterans guarding the perimeter saw the extreme criminals with guns trying to escape, they hid nearby and aimed at their vital points. They pulled the trigger without hesitation. The veterans of the Snowfield Brigade were on guard outside. They were sensitive to the battlefield and didn't hesitate to shoot when it was time to do so. These people couldn't escape. They were afraid that they would enter China's territory. When the Kaistan villagers heard the incessant gunshots, they curled up their bodies. Their eyes were filled with fear. They didn't know what was happening outside. The gunshots scared them so much that they prostrated on the ground and prayed. Young children were carried by adults. Their eyes were wide open. They didn't know what was happening outside. Toddlers who were still learning how to speak were comforted by young mothers. Their cries were low and sometimes loud, and then they fell asleep. The darkness had yet to pass. Everything was still going on. White Crane leaped from the top of the wall, followed by Zhiju. Yi Qian was the last to jump off the wall. As his body fell, Yi Qian felt a piercing pain in his back. Without stopping, he rushed out with his spear. Number 16, Number 18, and No. 26, who were in charge of providing support, walked in the middle. The firepower of the 6 of them concentrated on the firepower of the strong attack point. Bang! 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 The continuous gunshots were deafening, and the Special Forces soldiers were already used to it. They aimed and fired continuously, suppressing fire from the back door. Xia Jinyuan's deep and cold voice came through the earpiece. The gunshots at the back door instantly turned into a hail of bullets, and the fiery trails of the bullets lit up a corner of the back door. "Suppress, I'll leap forward." When the 3 trainees heard this, they pulled the trigger so hard that their fingers almost spasmed. Choosing to leap forward in such a situation, the probability of getting hit was quite high. Chapter 45:12. However, they had to restrain the enemy's firepower and provide an opportunity for their comrades to attack. They had no choice but to do so. "Okay, leave it to us. Be careful." A cold female voice rang in everyone's ears. There was no dissuasion, only protection. Weaver Sparrow had placed his life in the hands of his comrades. Those who protected him had to be well protected. On the battlefield, they were all comrades who could entrust their lives to each other. The extremists hiding on the wall were in a frenzy. They didn't know who these people were. They had been living here with their leader for more than half a year. Even the Jistin military didn't discover their hiding place. But tonight, the 3 kidnapped Chinese were in trouble. The special forces, including Xia Jinyuan, didn't know who the leader of the extremists was. If they did, they would be shocked. The leader hiding there was the leader of the largest extremist group in Jistin. Half a year ago, he was besieged by the Jistin military and had to flee from the second largest city in Jistin to the border between Jistin and China. He planned to enter China's territory. Now, his hiding place was attacked again, and this time, it was even more ferocious than the previous siege. The leader sitting in the house was no longer as calm as before. With the cover fire from various points, Weaver Sparrow forced his way in. A few smoke grenades were thrown from the front door. Under the cover of smoke and suppressive fire, K7, G3, and Xia Jinyuan rushed out in a few short seconds. At the same time, Number 17, who was guarding a point in the village, saw a dark path pass by in front of him. He was sure that his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. Situation detected. Unidentified target has appeared. Unidentified target has appeared. Heading toward the east. The battle area was divided into 4 major battle areas: east, west, north, and south. The east was where Weaver Sparrow and Bai He were held. Roger, Roger. East, Roger. The trainee soldier in charge of the east sector's security immediately replied. His finger, which had been placed on the trigger, tightened slightly, and his sharp gaze scanned the surroundings. Boom, boom, there was an explosion. Yi Qian heard screams coming from the high wall. Xia Jinyuan, G3, and K7, who were close to the target building, successfully threw the grenades into the high wall that had been difficult to break down. 3 grenades were thrown in at the same time, and the power was so strong that the ground shook. Break the door. Bang. Following the detonation of the grenade, several Special Forces soldiers rushed out from the dark and broke through the door as fast as they could to kill all the remaining firepower. The huge explosion made the extreme criminals, who were still stubbornly resisting, look up. When they saw the location of the explosion, they let out a roar that made their eyeballs almost pop out. That was the place where their leader lived and received the blessings of Allah. Now it was destroyed. It had been blown up. Kill them, we must kill them. Brave warriors, charge out with me and kill them. Kill them all. The destruction of the Holy Land caused the remaining people to lose their minds and shoot wildly in all directions. A trainee slowly adjusted his scope until the red light hit a vital spot. Then, he looked through the crosshair and pulled the trigger with a calm expression. Another extremist was eliminated. The bullet pierced through his heart from his back and out of his chest. There was no chance of survival for an extremist whose heart had been shattered. The extremists who tried to run toward the Holy Land fell to the ground one by one. The pungent smell of blood in the smoke became thicker and thicker, and the chaotic gunshots gradually weakened. The fierce battle had come to an end. Chapter 45:13. In the Holy Land, that had been breached, an extremist rushed out of the room. He was sweating profusely and had one of his legs hit by shrapnel. After a few exclamations, he realized that there was no one in the room. The low table that was placed on the carpet was overturned, and the cups and bowls on it were all over the floor. The person sitting on the carpet was nowhere to be seen. The extremist who rushed over was stunned. His rugged face gradually showed an expression of disbelief. After a while, he picked up his gun and rushed into the room. There was also no one there. The leader who had once vowed to live and die with all the warriors was gone. The extremist turned around and rushed out of the room with a face full of anger. The moment he appeared at the door, he was greeted by a few bullets that were fired at the same time. Bang! Bang! 3 bullets hit his chest and abdomen. The extremist with the gun in his hand was stunned at the door. He fell to the ground with a face full of anger. Outside, dozens of corpses were lying everywhere. Blood flowed like a river. After a round of fierce fighting, Yi Jian, who was slightly relaxed, leaned against the wall and stared at the surroundings with her eyes like torches, in case someone sneaked an attack on her. The special forces that broke in quickly took control of the entire scene. K7, G3, and Xia Jinyuan entered the room to search. However, they didn't find the so-called leader. They searched all the rooms but still couldn't find him. The leader might have escaped. Keep a close eye on the outside. If you see anything, shoot immediately. Qing Niao, cover our retreat. Roger, Yi Qian replied. The so-called leader wasn't caught. Xia Jinyuan didn't continue the search. Instead, he led the troops to retreat. The commotion was huge. To avoid trouble, it was better to leave as soon as possible. Yi Qian, who was outside, let out a sigh of relief. The attack was over. Our army didn't have any casualties. The leader wasn't found. Maybe he was already killed, or maybe he was still alive. Number 17 noticed a black shadow passing by. While reporting, he gestured to Number 19, indicating for him to follow and keep a close eye. Number 19, who was following closely, didn't find any more black shadows. However, he saw two figures, one tall and one thin, appear out of nowhere. Number 19 had already aimed at the taller figure. Bang, single shot, hitting the vitals. Clean and efficient, not giving the opponent a chance to survive. When the other thinner figure saw this, he suddenly raised his hand to his waist. Number 19, who was aiming with one eye, took a deep breath and prepared to aim and fire again. Suddenly, Number 17's anxious roar came. Open fire! Open fire! Detonate the equipment! Fire! Retreat, retreat, retreat! The sound was as urgent as war drums, but Number 19 only heard the first few words. Fire! Fire! Then, a huge explosion rang out. Number 19's eardrums were so shaken that it was as if thousands of bees had drilled into them, buzzing and buzzing. His mind went blank and he was completely stunned. Urgent questions came from the channel. Number 17's voice was so hoarse that it broke the sound barrier. 19. 19. Are you F***King alive? Answer me. Who the F***CK is your father? Stop yelling. All of you shut up. What's the situation inside? Squeak. Outside, Z7 Han Zheng stared intently at the village. It was obvious that it was another suicide bombing. There was clearly a chance to kill them, but it detonated because of an error in judgment. 19, trainee number 19. This kid better not get into trouble. Xia Jinyuan, who was retreating, was no longer calm. His face was so dark that it looked like it was going to hail. Number 19, please answer if you hear me. Please answer if you hear me. Chapter 45-14. The sound of the explosion had passed. Number 19, whose eardrums were pierced, could vaguely hear the anxious shouts of his comrades. It sounded distant and hollow, as if it came from the horizon, but also from the depths of the earth. I'm fine. It took a lot of effort for Number 19 to answer vaguely. Even though it was just a few words, it was enough to let the Snowfield Brigade soldiers breathe a sigh of relief. Xia Jinyuan gently closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his eyes were cold. He asked, "Did you kill an extremist just now?" It was a question, but also a confirmation. Yes. Number 19, whose brain was still buzzing, answered with a monosyllabic voice. He was the closest to the explosion and was the most severely affected. His greatest luck was that he had found a good shooting position and fired without hesitation when he discovered the target. This prevented the lethal detonation device from entering the range of him. At this time, other than being stunned and having a temporary blank in his mind, he didn't even have any external injuries. Not bad, you saved yourself. Xia Jinyuan, who had never praised a trainee in public, praised Number 19 for the first time. Moreover, it was on the battlefield. Number 19, who was praised, blinked hard. Dizzy, he slowly retracted his rifle. Everyone could hear his hee-hee laughter in their earphones. When the team members heard his slightly silly laughter, their hearts, which had jumped to their throats, gradually calmed down. Just now, when number 17 shouted whether he was alive or not, in that second, even the air froze. It was as if a huge rock had smashed into their hearts, making everyone's hearts stop beating. Sacrifice was too close to them. So close that they could still talk 1 second, but the next second they were separated by life and death. Retreat, retreat. Everyone retreat. Starting from the center, cover the periphery and be on alert. Roger, Roger. Roger. Start retreating, start retreating. The Special Forces soldiers who felt the wave of suicide bombs quickly withdrew from every corner, wiping the sweat off their forehead. Xia Jinyuan, whose back was covered in cold sweat, sighed to Yi Qian, who was retreating with him. Taking them with me is much more worrisome than taking you with me. It's so much easier to take you to the battlefield. As for them, I suspect that I will go bald in advance. The originally tense atmosphere was completely destroyed by him saying that he was going bald in advance. Yi Jian couldn't help but laugh. The image of the bald Xia Jinyuan immediately appeared in his mind. That image was so unbearable that it scared Yi Qian so much that he quickly shook his head to get rid of the unbearable image from his mind. They have a lot of people, so of course they're worried. But they are much stronger than me. The first time I used a gun to kill an enemy, my whole body was shaking, but they could still fight. They are much, much stronger than me. Yi Qian, who was drenched in sweat, followed closely behind him, retreating out of the village. At the outermost perimeter, E6, who had been lying still for nearly an hour, suddenly moved. There was finally movement at the position he was in charge of keeping an eye on. Someone popped out from the uneven ground like Tu Xing Sunday. He was very vigilant. Just as his eyes were exposed, he stood still and observed his surroundings carefully. He thought that he had successfully escaped, and the corner of his mouth even revealed a trace of a gloomy and proud smile. Since this place had been discovered, he had to leave this place and head to another place. E6 slowly adjusted his scope and locked onto the target. He turned on his headset and said calmly, "You didn't catch the leader? Then I guess there's a big fish here. Kill the fish and leave immediately." Xia Jinyuan, who was about to retreat to the edge of the village, stuck close to the uneven wall. In the night, he stared at his surroundings with his sharp eyes. He held a gun in one hand and gestured for his comrades to retreat with the other. Chapter 45-15. He and Yi Qian had been in charge of bringing up the rear, alternating with K7 and G3 to cover the retreat of the trainees, who were fully capable of being deployed. "Roger that," E6 said calmly. His eyes were fixed on the target whose head was starting to pop out. He fired the first shot of the fierce battle, while E6 fired the last shot to end the battle. The trigger was pulled, and the primer of the bullet ignited. The bullet left a trail of fire behind it as it tore through the air and headed straight for the target. Bang! Half of the head that popped out seemed to have been flattened. A faint smell of blood blew to the tip of E6's nose along with the night wind. He continued to lie down and did not move at all, as if he had melted into the night. After the last shot, the small village on the border of Jistan finally regained its peace. Outside, the 4 rescued herdsmen held tightly onto the hands of the Special Forces soldier who had been responsible for protecting them as they left the village. They were so excited that they did not know what to say. The wind from Tianshan blew past the village on the border of Jistan and blew away the smoke that shrouded the village. However, it could not blow away the strong smell of blood. The retreating Special Forces soldiers cleaned up the extremist criminals who had been killed in the village as they retreated out of the village. The wind blew, and the cold stars in the sky were still shining brightly. As time passed, there was movement in the quiet village on the border. The villagers of Jistan slowly walked out. The Special Forces soldiers of the Snowfield Brigade, who had walked from the village to the top of the mountain, saw a big fire at the foot of the mountain. It was a fire that had been lit with oil on top of dry grass. As soon as the sparks touched it, it burst into flames and crackled as it burned. The light from the fire illuminated a very wide area. They could even see the roofs of the houses around them clearly. Burning everything down in one go? That's a good idea, T6 said with a smile. His voice could be heard on the comms. V8 said calmly, if you continue to stay here, the pursuers will be here soon. It would take another 3 hours to get back to the border from the village, so they had to hurry. The team members' low laughter could be heard on the comms. The trainees who had completed their training were the loudest. Without further communication, the 46th trainees made the best use of their time to return home. The 46th Special Forces soldiers crossed the steel bridge over the Yukon River at 1:36 in the morning. All of them crossed the bridge at 1:38 in the morning. No one was sacrificed and they arrived safely in the country. The 30 trainees of the Snowfield Brigade finally felt that they were on solid ground once their feet touched the soil of their own country. They no longer had the feeling of emptiness that they had when they were fighting overseas. They continued to move forward without rest. When they were about to reach the Border Defense Company, Xia Jinyuan ordered everyone to sit down and rest. After 3 days and 2 nights of continuous combat without sleep, all the Special Forces soldiers, including the veterans, had reached their physical limit. After sitting down, none of them wanted to get up. The 30 trainees sat in one corner, while the 16 veterans sat in another. Yi Qian did not sit down immediately. Instead, he whispered to Xia Jinyuan, "Help me deal with the wound on my back. I was scratched by a sharp rock when I jumped down from a high wall." Xia Jinyuan turned on the miniature flashlight in his hand, and his handsome face changed color. "Come with me." Biting his cheeks, he did not say anything else. He grabbed Yi Qian's hand and walked away. His tired comrades did not pay much attention to them. Only E6, who was closest to them, looked up and glanced at their hands. Although he felt a little strange, he did not think too much about it. As the trainees rested, most of the veterans looked back and forth at them. Some of the veterans reminded them to deal with the abrasions on their bodies in time to avoid inflammation and swelling. There were more or less abrasions. The veterans reminded them to check their own wounds first and let their comrades help them deal with the areas that they could not reach. Chapter 45:16. E6, who was wiping the rifle in his hand, looked at them and turned to Z7. "They're ready to graduate. Not bad. There are no cowards among the soldiers trained by Q King." Z7 smiled and sighed. Q King's efforts were not in vain. They can all go out and carry out missions. They're no longer trainees, but comrades who will fight side by side with us. Why do I feel like I have a daughter who's growing up? Am I crazy? Crazy. Even the gender is different. My daughter is growing up. It's more suitable for Qing Niao. E6 raised his chin and leaned a little towards Z7 with the cleaned U-5 rifle in his arms. He looked at the 2 graceful figures not far away and whispered, "Look in front. Our captain brought Qing Niao out single-handedly. We all said that he was raising her like a daughter. Now that Qing Niao is able to stand on her own, we'll interview her father later to see if he has any thoughts." Raising a daughter. Old Father and Captain Z7, who had witnessed the whole process of how his comrade wooed Qing Niao, tried his best to hold back his laughter, and said seriously, "Okay, we'll ask him later. Ha 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 ha, when the time comes, Family Xia's old 6 will probably vomit blood. Raising a daughter and an old father, it's clearly a child bride and an old boyfriend. Ask him. He liked to watch a good show. When the time comes, his old father's face will definitely be colorful and lively." Yi Qian, who was talking to his comrades, didn't know that she was being raised by Lieutenant Colonel Xia Jinyuan. She also didn't know that the upcoming awkward situation would be a good opportunity for Xia Jinyuan to announce their relationship. Z7, who had treated his bruised elbow, put away his hygiene bag and smiled at E6. Let's go and talk to Qing Niao. I haven't talked to her in a long time. I miss her. What are you trying to do? Are you up to no good? E6 looked at Z7 cautiously. Put away your tricks. If you dare to have any thoughts about Qing Niao, be careful of our fists. E6, who didn't like to talk in front of outsiders and whose presence was even weaker than K7's, warned his comrades. It couldn't be helped. Z7 was the best at sweet-talking in the entire team. The number of girlfriends he had dated before was the sum of all his comrades. Qing Niao was the only female soldier in the team. He was really worried that one day, Qing Niao would be coaxed by this brat's sweet words. There were several times when they chatted in the middle of the night, and all of them raised their fists to warn Z7. They even warned Z7 to stay 3 meters away from Qing Niao. Even if there was something they needed to talk about, they had to be accompanied by their comrade. Amused by his expression, Z7 raised his eyebrows and flashed a playful smile like he used to when he frequented nightclubs. I'm not doing anything. I don't have any bad intentions. I just want to have a chat with Qing Niao. E6 looked at him in disbelief. You have a lot of tricks up your sleeve. It's definitely not as simple as just chatting with the Qing Niao. Tell me, are you trying to harm the Qing Niao? In all honesty, he really just wanted to chat with Qing Niao. He had no other intentions. Family Xia. How dare he touch old 6 woman? No, he really didn't dare. He still wanted to live for a few more years. In the face of his comrades' suspicions, especially his character, Z7 felt that it was necessary to stand up for himself. Do you think that if I wanted to do something to Qing Niao, our captain would let me off? Would you guys let me off? Am I tired of living? Do I want to harm Qing Niao right under your noses? I really don't have the guts. I've never thought of doing that. Besides, Weaving Sparrow and White Crane are here. What else do you think I can do? E6 thought about it. That was true. With Q King, who was like a father, and a group of comrades around, Z7 probably wouldn't dare to harm Qing Niao even if he had the guts. Chapter 45:17. They stood up and walked a few steps before E6 suddenly sighed. Do you think Qing Niao will be coaxed home by one of our comrades to become his wife in the future? Which bastard will be so lucky? If one of our comrades really coaxes Qing Niao away, damn it, we'll take turns to beat him up. Z7 looked at his comrade seriously and nodded. That's right, that's right. We'll take turns to beat him up. Whoever doesn't dare to beat him up is a coward. As for which bastard he would beat up, Z7, who always liked to join in the fun, didn't dare to say. He was afraid that he would be beaten up by the guy who coaxed Qing Niao home to become his wife. His strong desire to live told him that he could mess with anyone but family Xia's 6th bro. Xia Jinyuan had already treated Yi Qian's wounds. As soon as the two of them walked out, they saw Z7 and E6 walking towards them. The 4 of them bumped their fists. Z7 smiled at Yi Qian and said, I have to say that kidnapping you guys was the biggest mistake of their lives. They uprooted everything. The Border Special Forces have to thank the 3 of you. After being in the military for so many years, Yi Qian had never thought that he would be kidnapped one day except for the time when he was trying to rescue Zhou Yijin. However, the 3 of them were the ones who were willing to be kidnapped. I didn't expect it either. It's a different feeling. Yi Jian answered with a smile. Under the faint starlight, her picturesque features seemed to have been outlined with the finest meticulous brushwork. Every stroke was graceful, and every frown and smile was like the sun, without the slightest post-war haze. Number 26 whispered to his comrades, Qing Niao is very strong. When I cooperated with her before, she was as calm as a veteran. I was a little scared at first, but after seeing her like that, I wasn't that scared anymore. You're saying that she's been on missions like today's many times already? Number 25 quickly glanced at Yi Qian and whispered, "That's not in line with the rules. She's still studying." It's not against the rules, but it's not against the rules. Look at her, and then look at the 10 of us. It's clear whether this is the first time we've carried out such a mission. Number 26 analyzed that he was the only one who had cooperated with Yi Qian in battle. He was the only one who had seen Yi Qian kill the enemy trainees at close range. Everything he had experienced made him believe in his own judgment. Take a look at the veteran's attitude towards Qing Niao and the way he speaks. You can actually see some clues. We thought that Qing Niao had gotten in through the back door like last time, but we were wrong. Qing Niao doesn't need to go through the back door at all. She's a member of the Snowfield Brigade. She's a comrade in arms with the veterans. They kill enemies together and train together. With number 20 SIXS analysis, the other trainees gradually fell silent. After a few seconds of silence, number 18 said, "Number 20 SIXS analysis is correct. I also think that Qing Niao is a special forces soldier in the brigade. With Qing Niao's ability, she doesn't need to go through the back door at all. Q King and the veterans have said it themselves. No one in the brigade can compare to Qing Niao's marksmanship and sniping skills. With this level of skill, why would she need to go through the back door? Besides, what's the point of going through the back door in our brigade? Who would be willing to go through the back door? This isn't a place where one can just laze around and get promoted. The veterans earned their ranks with their lives. Those who want to laze around and go through the back door to join our brigade? Are they tired of living?" Previously, most of the trainees had been at a dead end because Yi Qian had parachuted into the Snowfield Brigade. In addition, they didn't know Yi Qian well and hadn't fought together before. They couldn't establish a comrade-in-arms relationship. They had secretly wondered if Yi Qian had gone through the back door to get into the Snowfield Brigade. Chapter 45:18. Now that he had analyzed the situation, it was as if the fog had cleared and he could see the moon. That was right. The Snowfield Brigade was not a unit where one could get promoted just by fooling around. Those who really wanted to fool around would not have gotten in through the back door. They would not have gotten in even if they were tired of living. Since she did not get in through the back door, then Qing Niao was just like them. She had gotten into the team with her own strength and became a qualified Special Forces soldier with her own strength. They could vaguely hear the voices of a few veterans talking. They looked up and saw that the veterans, including their captain, were all slightly bent down when they spoke due to the height problem of Qing Niao. That kind of casual action made them see the veterans' tolerance for the green bird, and there was also a kind of admiration in it. Did Qing Niao, who was admired by the veterans, need to get in through the back door? She did not need to. Back then, they had wiped out 30 elite soldiers from each unit. Did Qing Niao need to get in through the back door? She did not need to. She is much stronger than us. That's why she can get the respect of the veterans. Look at us. We don't even dare to get close to the bonfire. She, on the other hand, was carrying the bodies with us just now. Her movements were even more nimble than ours. It can be seen that her mental fortitude is much stronger than ours. Don't say things like Qing Niao getting in through the back door. It's embarrassing. After number 26 finished speaking, the trainees who were looking forward to completing their apprenticeship fell silent. The night at the border was very quiet. It was so quiet that they could hear the breathing of their comrades beside them. Some trainees who were recognized by the veterans sat quietly, while others lay flat and rested. Although they looked relaxed, there was still a hint of post-battle emotion deep in their eyes. It was the first time they killed an enemy, the first time their hands were stained with blood, the first time they saw someone fall beside them, the first time they stepped on blood-stained ground, the first time they faced death. Every first time brought them countless emotions. Yi Qian sat down and looked at them. It was as if he was looking at himself in the past. He sighed softly and said to the veteran who had the faint smell of iodine on him, "They are a little like me now, but they are much stronger than me. When I faced death for the first time, I was very calm and did not think too much. But I had nightmares for a few nights before I slowly recovered." After all, she was a Special Forces soldier who had undergone systematic training. She had studied and trained at the same time. She was a little confused when she left the battlefield. Even though they were silent now, they didn't feel lost because they knew exactly why they were doing all of this. Z7 looked at them. "That's right. The first time I worked with you was in Tongzhou. At that time, I was still wondering if you would succeed. Don't drag me down when the time comes. It turned out that I was very wrong." Speaking of the first time they worked with Yi Jian, the dozen or so veterans had endless things to say. Now that the trainees were on green alert, they felt quite comfortable sitting and chatting. After Xia Jinyuan reported the news of their return, he walked over and saw the veterans chatting around his girlfriend. He strode over and sat down to chat. After about half an hour of rest, Xia Jinyuan stood up and said in a cold voice, "Gather." Chapter 45:19. Once the command was given, everyone except for the two trainees who were on guard duty gathered as quickly as possible. Xia Jinyuan praised the new recruits of the Snowfield Brigade without holding back. Facing the special forces who were able to stand on their own, Xia Jinyuan straightened his back and gave them the highest military salute. This salute expressed his joy and also his recognition of them. His salute instantly made the corners of the eyes of the Special Forces soldier, who had not shed a single tear even though he had suffered and been injured in training, wet. When the veterans clapped, tears gushed out of his eyes. Sigh, he felt a little embarrassed, but he couldn't control it. After this battle, the trainees were no longer trainees, but comrades who could fight side by side with the veterans. Yi Qian looked at the straight figure standing in front of her, and her eyes were filled with tenderness. That was her captain, her comrade, the love of her life, and the strength of the Snowfield Brigade. Her gaze was met by Xia Jinyuan's sharp gaze. When Yi Qian saw it, she immediately retracted the tenderness in her eyes and stood up straight. Now, she was a soldier and he was the captain. In the hazy morning light, a group of soldiers in camouflage uniforms walked through the grayish-brown mountain range and arrived at a small river formed by the snow of Tianshan Mountain. Xia Jinyuan looked at the location. They were 40 kilometers away from the border of Kyrgyzstan, so they could wash up and sleep for a few hours. After a night of fierce battle, not only were they covered in smoke, but there was also a thick smell of blood. They needed to wash up properly. They took out their toiletries from their backpacks, a stainless steel cup that usually served as a bowl or cup, a small towel, a toothbrush and toothpaste, and jumped barefoot into the river to wash up. Stand in a row, no one is allowed to go up. In order to avoid drinking the foot-washing water, the experienced Z7 shouted at the comrades who were running up the river. When he shouted, the rest of his comrades who hadn't run away came back to their senses. When a few of his comrades who had run away came back, Z7 scooped up a cup of clear water from the snow and shouted, "Splash them! Splash them! How can they have such a bad conscience, making us drink foot-washing water?" A cup of water had already been splashed. With Z7 taking the lead, the water-splashing battle began. When Yi Qian saw this, she immediately felt that another big battle was about to start, so she ran back to the shore at lightning speed. A pair of large hands firmly grabbed Yi Qian's wrist, followed by a deep and sexy laugh, and pulled her back to the shore. "Why are you running? The stones are slippery, be careful not to fall." After pulling his girlfriend back, Xia Jinyuan didn't let go and held her tightly until he pulled Yi Qian to stand beside a pile of backpacks. The team members went down to wash up the river's side Yi Qian's. Initially, he wanted to pull Yi Jian along to be on guard, but Yi Jian ran too fast and he didn't manage to pull her back in time. Now that it was in his hands, he would not let it go so easily. Oh, that's right. Also, when they were lining up just now, they even shot electricity at him. He almost couldn't control himself. Yi Qian looked at the comrades splashing water on each other in the river. She was so happy that she didn't realize that Xia Jinyuan was still holding her hand tightly. She didn't realize that it was exactly what Xia Jinyuan wanted. The two of them stood side by side on the riverbank, with the undulating Tianshan Mountains as a backdrop, watching the splashing battle. This splashing battle was probably arranged by Captain Xia to reduce the pressure on the comrades who were fighting for the first time. Chapter 45-20. The splashing water droplets were illuminated by the rising sun and shone like diamonds. The water droplets were thrown high into the air and streaked across the dazzling light of the morning sun before falling back into the river and converging into the distance. The veterans signaled for their young captain to come down. They waved their big, wet hands and shouted toward the shore, "Captain, come down, come down! Let's fight them! They've just left their nest and they're already thinking of turning the tables. You have to come down and support us. It's 30 against 14. There's no chance of winning with the disparity in numbers. We urgently need help." The one who shouted was the T6 combatant. He was not surprised to see the two people holding hands on the shore. He was grinning from ear to ear like a child. He knew the true relationship between the two people on the shore, so he did not feel that there was anything wrong with the big hand holding the small hand. After the continuous maneuver battles, he was relaxed and had a little fun playing around. When he saw the two people holding hands, he did not think of reminding them and even shouted at the top of his lungs. The T6 combatant, who was screaming for reinforcements, was pushed into the water by two Special Forces soldiers who had gone through a lot of hardships to become regular soldiers. The tall and burly man fell into the cold river water and splashed up. He was instantly pinned down by his two comrades until his arms flailed and he screamed for help. The T6 combatant who spoke did not feel that there was anything wrong with the two people holding hands on the shore. The team members who pounced on him were also careless and did not pay much attention to the situation on the shore. They only cared about throwing the veterans who had bullied them back then into the water to relieve the anger in their hearts that had been building for hundreds of days and nights. It was not that they were really angry, but they just felt, damn it, they could finally bully them back openly. They were no longer like before where they could only be angry but not dare to say anything. Finally, they were the ones who were in charge. After the T6 combatant was pushed into the river, the V8 combatant was also pushed into the river. Even the vice-captain, G3, was no exception. All of them were pushed into the river and were tortured back and forth by the Special Forces soldiers who were in charge. They called it scrubbing. The quick-witted combatants like K7 and E6 had already noticed that there was something wrong with the way their team members were looking at them. They quickly went ashore ahead of time and narrowly avoided the disaster. The veterans who were a little slower or were not on guard were in for it. The T6 combatant earlier said it was 30 against 14. When K7 and the others went up, it became 30 against 8. They had an overwhelming advantage in numbers. OF*CK, where are you rubbing? Don't rub my crotch. Rebellion. Are you afraid of my fists? F*CK. Who tickled my feet? Aren't you afraid of my foot getting infected? Don't, I'm ticklish, F*CK, save me, I can't take it anymore. The clear river water, which was so shallow that it didn't even reach their calves, was filled with laughter and laughter. It had become a paradise for this group of young Special Forces soldiers who had been on the move for 3 consecutive days and 2 nights to relieve their stress. The smoke from the battle was washed away by the clear river, and the thick stench of blood was washed away by the river water. Finally, it disappeared. Yi Qian saw the old soldiers being bullied by their new comrades and heard some inappropriate sounds from time to time. Although she felt a little embarrassed, she didn't want to avoid it. Instead, she smiled until her eyes were like crescent moons. She didn't even hear the man beside her calling her name a few times. Lieutenant Colonel Xia saw that all of her attention was on the river. His eyebrows, which seemed to have been meticulously trimmed with ink, were raised high. Then, he bent down, so close that his thin lips brushed against her earlobe. He whispered with a smile, "Do you want to go down and play in the water too? I'll carry you over. Let's splash some water together." Chapter 45-21. The comrades in the river were having too much fun. Yi Jian had never seen them, who had always been steady, play like children in the river. She was completely unaware that the man beside her suddenly spoke to her at such a close distance. She, who was unprepared, felt his thin lips close to her ear. His low voice was as clean as the snow from Tianshan Mountain. It went straight into her ear like a thin hook and then fell into her heart. She didn't know if Xia Jinyuan did it on purpose, but when he leaned over to talk, E6 looked over while laughing loudly. He even shouted, "Captain Xia, hurry up and get down." Then the last word of our warning, was cut off. It was cut off with two crisp cracking sounds. When the voice was cut off, the two eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Due to the shock and the fact that he was standing on a big rock on the riverbed, E6's feet slipped and his tall body fell straight down. K7 steadily reached out to catch his comrade, who was sliding down the big rock. His gaze calmly looked to the left. E6, who had steadied himself, shouted again, "Captain, you're molesting Qing Niao." K7 silently retreated to the side. He needed to stay away from this kind of comrade who had no foresight and was so stupid that he couldn't save him. He didn't want to be implicated. It wasn't that E6 didn't have foresight, but the conversation he had with Z7 was still in his mind, so he didn't think about what he said at all. This time, it was Yi Qian's turn to be shocked. The man beside her suddenly kissed her ear, and even more unexpectedly, her comrade saw it. And he even shouted that she was being molested by Captain Xia. She had to do something. Yi Qian knew what she had to do, but her mind went blank when her comrade suddenly shouted at her. She only did one subconscious action: jump away. She had to jump away from the man beside her. Quickly, before her comrades noticed, she had to jump away quickly. And it was this action that made Yi Qian even more tragic. Previously, she was too engrossed in her comrade's play, so she didn't notice that her hand was being held. Now that she was jumping away, perhaps the always black-bellied Captain Xia didn't expect her to suddenly jump away violently. He held her hand and said, "Be careful." Then he pulled Yi Qian, who was as frightened as a little white rabbit, and pulled Yi Qian firmly into his arms. Previously, he was holding her with one hand, but this time, he was holding her with both hands. The moment he pulled Yi Qian, who was about to jump away, into his arms. Captain Xia's time. And oh yeah, with both hands in the air, it was as if they were conjoined twins, and with the valiance of a hurricane, it blew into everyone's eyes. The momentum was too fierce, so fierce that E6's mouth was wide open, so fierce that his comrades who were still playing in the water in bed were all shocked. This time, even the T6 combatant was stunned. A mouthful of cold river water gushed into his mouth, causing him to choke and cough violently. Oh shit. Too explosive, too explosive. Hugging on the spot, whispering sweet nothings to each other in public. Too manly. Chapter 45-22. For example, T6, V8, G3, K7 and Z7 only felt that it was explosive and caught a trace of strangeness from their captain's unusual movements. Those who didn't know, such as Weaving Sparrow, White Crane, and E6, felt that something was wrong, but more of their psychological activities were represented by E6. I bet Qing Niao would give the captain a deep greeting with her fist to his pretty face. E6 whispered to K7, who was a few steps away from him. With him as the representative, he spoke out the thoughts of all his comrades who did not know what was going on in their minds. His comrades who were playing in the river silently stood up. A few veterans, such as Bai He and GK, who were unaware of the situation, were finally able to climb out of the river with a splash. Dee-da-da, dee-da-da. The water droplets in the wet clothes dripped into the water like raindrops. The river flowed with a hua-hua sound, while the comrades standing in the river waited silently. She was waiting for Qing Niao to punch her captain in the face. At that moment Yi Qian, whose entire body was as stiff as stone, was already stupefied. His black eyes, which were as clear as water, were wide open. Xu Yan's heart palpitated with fear. As for his brain, it had already crashed, and all the data was blank. Apart from Lieutenant Colonel Xia Jinyuan, who was the instigator of all this, everyone else was either stunned, dumbfounded, shocked, watching, or waiting. While everyone was drunk, Lieutenant Colonel Xia was the only one who was sober. He lowered his head and furrowed his brows. His handsome face revealed a trace of displeasure. The shore is full of sharp stones. Aren't you afraid that you'll knock your head on a stone and bleed? Although Junyan was unhappy, his voice was very soft. K7 nudged E6 and said calmly, Qing Niao might have sprained her ankle. Help me take a look. Sprained your ankle? Oh, okay. Out of trust for his comrade, E6 nodded obediently, and it really went over. K7 nodded slightly, encouraging and cheering for E6's bravery. He showed off his dark side without batting an eyelid. As E6 ran towards the two people who were hugging each other, Z7's eyes flashed as he stood in the river. His weak voice drifted into G3's ears. Last night, E6 told me that Qing Niao is the daughter that our captain raised. Qing Niao is the daughter, and our captain is the father. G3's neck was like a rusty robot that had not been oiled. And then? What do you think? His intuition told him that the guy in front of him, who had as many girlfriends as the rest of the team combined, would not have any good intentions. Z7 smiled. He said that he wanted to ask about his daughter's achievements today and how her father would feel. He wanted to interview her personally. As expected, he didn't have any good intentions. G3 raised his head and rubbed his forehead. His long legs moved in the water, and the sound of water splashing could be heard. He shortened the distance between the two of them from half a meter to shoulder. How did you answer? They whispered to each other like thieves. I have to agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I suggested to him that he could ask Qing Niao when she is around. It would be best if both parties were present. After interviewing the father, the captain, and the daughter, Qing Niao, the results would be better. Z7's suggestion was highly approved by G3. In order to show his approval, G3 gave Z7 a thumbs up. This award is for you. Please accept it. I accept it. Z7 nodded reservedly. Looking at the figure running past him, he smiled. When do you think he will interview you? With K7 adding fuel to the fire and E6 not being able to hide his words, I think we'll be able to see the most exciting interview in history very soon. Chapter 45-23. G3's professional analysis made Z7 nod. I believe in your analysis. Now that we've showered and played, I'm a little tired. Why don't we go up and rest? He nodded. The two friends went up hand in hand. T6 and V8 saw them with their sharp eyes. Due to their many years of comradeship and tacit understanding, the two friends looked at each other and raised their heads towards the shore. Their eyes conveyed the same message. Go up? After raising their heads and confirming their gazes, the two friends went up hand in hand. The comrades who were waiting for Qing Niao to beat up and molest her captain saw E6 barge into their line of sight and destroy the scene of the two main characters hugging each other. The comrades blinked. What was the meaning of this? What was the meaning of this? What was E6 doing here? Was he going to help Qing Niao beat up the captain? How daring was that? E6 didn't dare. He came over like the wind and stepped on small stones. The sound of him stepping on them startled Yi Qian, who was stunned. Captain Xia! Yi Jian, who was stupefied, stunned, and startled, woke up, shocked and panicked. Her intelligence and reaction also came back. Seeing the running E6 scraping by her side, the quick-witted Yi Jian smiled and said, "Thank you, Captain Xia. I'm fine. It's just that my ankle seems to be sprained." Her ankle seemed to be a little sprained, and her volume was on the high side. Afraid that E6 could not hear her clearly, the quick-witted Yi Jian said again, "Sorry to trouble you to help me, Captain Xia. I'll check if I'm hurt myself." "You really sprained your ankle? Let K7 check. The military doctor is here. You don't have to do it yourself." E6, who ran over, heard what Yi Qian said. He heard it too clearly. After he finished speaking, he added, "K7, that quack doctor said you might have sprained your ankle. He was right. Did you sprain both of your legs? Quick, help her sit down first." He even enthusiastically helped Lieutenant Colonel Xia take on the heavy responsibility of helping Yi Jian up. He also praised Lieutenant Colonel Xia for his quick reaction just now. E6 smiled and said, "It's still the old man who reacted quickly. Otherwise, the little girl would have hit her head today." He lowered his head and reached out his hand, speaking with emotion. Unable to struggle, Yi Qian choked on his own saliva and coughed. If she did not misunderstand, the old father that E6 mentioned was Captain Xia, and the little daughter was her? "E6, you have great eyesight." At this moment, Yi Qian was no longer worried that his hug with Xia Jinyuan would sour their relationship. Instead, he was worried about how Captain Xia would deal with E6. Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who now had one arm around her waist instead of two, raised his eyebrows. His dark, unfathomable eyes glanced at E6 with a half-smile. "Old father? Me?" Although the voice sounded like it was asking with a smile, if these words were folded according to the strokes and all the strokes were turned into blades, E6 would probably be turned into a human skeleton by the blades at this moment. As a member of the Special Forces, E6 had a strong desire to live. He quickly retracted his outstretched hand, as if it was scalded by fire. He smiled at Lieutenant Colonel Xia. "I don't think the two of us need to help each other. With Captain's strength, he can carry Qing Niao directly. K7, come and take a look at Qing Niao. You guessed it right, she sprained her ankle." E6's strong desire to live made him more quick-witted. He pulled K7 into the center of the whirlwind. Comrade, it's time for us to fight side by side again." K7 expressed that he did not want to fight at all. He was so tired and wanted to sleep. He waved his hand and replied indifferently as usual, "Qing Niao is more familiar with gunshot wounds than I am. Solve your own problems. I'm a little tired, I'm going to sleep." Chapter 45-24. This was the first time Yi Qian had heard such a long explanation from K7 ever since he joined the team. He had no choice. His strong desire to survive forced K7 to give a long explanation. He didn't want reality to force him to give in. E6 took a step back and said in surprise, "I couldn't tell. Qing Niao, you're also studying medicine as a side job? Check it out yourself. Captain, you should accompany Qing Niao. Take care of the female comrades in our team." "I won't accompany you. I don't know anything and will only cause trouble." "Captain, you've worked hard. I'm going to sleep too. Goodbye, Captain." E6, who hadn't been afraid even when the helicopter's engine had malfunctioned. Now, his strong desire to survive was awakened by his captain's smile. He had to leave quickly. He had to leave this place as soon as possible. He might really lose his life if he was late by even a second. Yi Jian's hands kept tugging at the hand that was holding her waist tightly. With E6 in front of her, She couldn't move too much and had to maintain her expression. She was clearly panicking and anxious, but she still had to put on a smile on her face. Tired, so tired. She had never been so tired before. Xia Jinyuan was so angry at his old father that his liver, lungs, heart, all his organs were aching. He was about to have an acute myocardial infarction. Old father? Old father? Old father? He was his baby's old father? Then what about his real father-in-law? Even if he was a father, he was still a young father, okay? Come back. Old father, who was about to have an acute myocardial infarction, said in a cold voice. E6, who was about to escape, was rooted to the ground like a rivet. K7, who had taken a few steps, stopped and turned around. Although their captain didn't mention any names, K7 knew that the two words, come back, were meant for him and E6. K7, who had just returned, saw T6, V8, G3, and Z7, who were about to go crazy from laughing. Among them, Z7's condition was the most serious. His facial features were all distorted. Heh, do you think you can escape? Yi Qian finally managed to pry the hand that was holding her waist like glue. She used a lot of strength and her face turned red. It didn't look like she had used too much strength, but more like she was blushing out of embarrassment. The weaving sparrow nudged the white crane and said excitedly, let's go up, let's go up. I have a feeling that something big is about to happen. Bai He, who came from a scholarly family, was not in a hurry at all. After wringing his clothes dry, he said with a gentle smile, let's go. If we continue washing, our skin will wrinkle. Then, he said to the 30 freshly minted comrades, gather, gather. Captain and Qing Niao haven't washed up yet. Let's switch. Alright. The fresh comrades who had been standing in the river as pillars for at least 3 minutes were like galloping horses. With a stride of their long legs, they rode the river toward the shore. They had no idea what was going on. They only felt that the veterans seemed to be very excited, so they were excited as well. Weaving Sparrow silently patted White Crane's shoulder. Not bad, he even took care of his new comrade. White Crane maintained his gentle smile. Of course, in the future they would be eating, sleeping, and bathing together. Of course, he had to take care of them. Yi Qian glanced at his comrades from the corner of his eyes. He was about to leave the situation to Lieutenant Colonel Xia to deal with. She cleared her dry throat and said calmly, Captain Xia, I'll go down and wash up. You guys continue chatting. She had to leave. She had to leave. Captain Xia was greatly agitated and would probably do something even more exciting. And this time, she was the main character. The quick-witted Yi Qian wanted to run away. Chapter 45-25. But how could she run away? Colonel Xia, who was faster, quickly grabbed her wrist and coaxed her gently. You sprained your ankle and you're still moving around. Be good, don't move. My daughter is gone, it's not good for an old father to continue talking. Colonel Xia saw what his girlfriend was thinking and smiled mischievously. He raised his eyebrows and Yi Qian felt that something was wrong. His dark eyes narrowed and he stuttered, Why were you, I? My father isn't you. Of course not. My father-in-law is still in the capital. You're my Yi Qian, who rushed over to cover Xia Jinyuan's thin lips, felt an earth-shattering in his heart. He quickly covered Xia Jinyuan's mouth. She knew what he was going to say. He couldn't say it, he couldn't say it. E6 was speechless. What did he discover? What did he miss? What did he do? Could he still be alive today? Could he still see the sun tomorrow? Oh shit. No matter how dumb he was, he knew that something was wrong. He also knew that he was in trouble. At that moment, E6's face turned bitter. He immediately begged Colonel Xia for mercy. Captain, I'm sorry. I'm stupid. I was wrong. K7, you son of AB** TC. You've caused me so much trouble. Z7, you get over here. You've caused me so much trouble. E6 wanted to cry but had no tears. He had a premonition that he would die with regret. Xia Jinyuan's clear eyes reflected the morning sun. His eyes were brighter but darker. His girlfriend had already thrown herself into his arms. Naturally, he had to hug her generously. Of course, he had to hug her with both hands. Ah, Yi Qian exclaimed. He simply carried Yi Qian in a princess carry and said to E6, "Did you see anything?" At this point, it was clear what their relationship was. The comrades who came ashore were so shocked that they froze on the spot. Mother, what did they see? Their captain hugged Qing Niao and carried her. GK and Bai He were barefoot on the shore. The most shocking scene in front of them made them slip and almost fall. Damn! He hugged her like this. G3, K7, T6, and V8, who knew what was going on, were dumbfounded. They really didn't expect this. Today was a good day for them to announce their relationship. Congratulations to their captain finally got his virginity. He no longer had to pretend that he was single. It wasn't easy. Yi Jian, who was in a panic, directly buried her head in his arms. Her face was so red that it could bleed. What was she hiding from? Theirs no longer. She suddenly remembered that the man who was hugging her had said that he would find a suitable opportunity to tell his comrades about their relationship. Now, was it the time to announce their relationship? Yi Jian, who was in a passive position, no longer panicked. She even took the initiative and firmly hugged the neck of the man who had always helped her, loved her deeply, held her hands, and brought her up. The moment he put on the bracelets, he calmed down. The man who was hugging her so tightly was her boyfriend, her husband. She loved him so deeply and deeply. Xia Jinyuan smiled. He lowered his head and looked gently at his blushing girlfriend. I'm very happy, very happy, very happy. He was happy that she didn't run away again. He was happy that she bravely reached out her hands and stood in front of his comrades to announce their relationship. Yi Qian nodded. Her heart was beating wildly. She whispered, I'm very happy too. Chapter 45-26. All these years, because of her, their relationship had been going on in secret. For her, he was willing to stay by her side and not be angry or disgusted by it. He had been quietly accompanying her and tolerating her. Now, he could finally say it out loud and didn't have to hide it anymore. The moment he said it, Yi Qian only knew that he was really happy. He was so happy that the corners of his eyes turned slightly red. Xia Jinyuan was smiling so widely that there was no coldness on his handsome face. He looked up and asked E6 with a smile, Did you see anything? E6's heart was beating fast and his head kept nodding. I saw it. Captain and Qing Niao are a couple. Yes, she and Captain Xia were a couple. E6 was about to cry. He didn't know how many times he had slapped himself in the face. Who asked you to talk nonsense and be so insensible? An old father raising a daughter. You're in trouble now. Captain was like the king of hell. With his methods, he probably had hundreds of ways to deal with him. Tough. They had to go through thick and thin together. His comrades couldn't escape because of him. Then, E6, who had recovered his intelligence, immediately started to flatter him. Captain, you and Qing Niao are a couple. I wish you and Qing Niao a long and happy marriage in advance. May the two of you have children soon. Not bad, very good. Xia Jinyuan smiled in satisfaction. As for Yi Qian, his face was still red, so red that it was almost burning. After flattering him, E6 slapped his thigh and said, I was wondering why Z7 insisted that I interview an old father raising a daughter in front of Qing Niao last night. It turns out that he's as blind as me. There was K7 just now. This quack doctor has to leave. You and Qing Niao were clearly having a good chat, but you had to say that Qing Niao sprained her ankle and asked me to come over to help. Isn't this ruining your plans? These two guys are so uneasy. If he didn't see the sun tomorrow, those two guys wouldn't see him either. They had to go through thick and thin together. No one could escape. Hearing the blushing Yi Qian say softly, "Captain Xia, put me down first." It was obvious that Z7 and K7 had done it on purpose. They wanted to watch the drama unfold. However, no one had expected E6 to say it out loud, leaving Captain Xia with no way out. Yi Jian didn't blame Z7 and K7. The veterans of the Shuiyu Brigade were all the same. They were all people who liked to watch a show. They liked to have fun when they didn't see each other. With Captain Xia's temperament, the three of them would not have an easy time. Xia Jinyuan naturally knew this as well. He really didn't expect K7 to be so good at manipulating people. Even E6, who was considered good at manipulating people, became an idiot in front of him. With just a few words, he managed to trick E6 to come over and take the lead. Actually, they didn't mean to expose his relationship with Yi Qian. They just wanted him to put on a good show. Who would have thought? The stone is a little slippery. Stand properly. Xia Jinyuan carefully put Yi Qian down as if he was protecting a treasure. His voice was so gentle that it made E6 shiver. It was too soft and too soft. He was treating Yi Qian like a glass doll. Didn't he beat up Yi Qian until he was hospitalized during training? Now, he knew how to cherish it. Also, that expression of deep affection was very unlike his style. A tiger turned into a kitten. Damn it, the change was too big. He couldn't accept it. After successfully dragging his comrade down, E6 silently looked away. As a single man, the love in front of him made his heart feel stifled. It was as if he had eaten grass and had indigestion. Standing still, Yi Qian uncomfortably brushed her short hair that was messed up by the wind. Although she was very uncomfortable, the shyness on her little face was no different from that of a newly married woman. Luckily, the Special Forces soldiers had good mental fortitude and were able to stay calm. Chapter 45-27. Xia Jinyuan held her hand and stood properly. He looked up slightly and saw that his comrades were all standing still as if they had been immobilized. They were staring at the two of them. Obviously, they had not recovered from the shock. Some of them probably weren't clear enough. He raised his hand at Z7 and smiled. Come here, come here. Go, it's your turn. Good luck. G3 immediately let go of their hands and pushed Z7's back at the same time, revealing a motherly smile. Don't be afraid, you're not fighting alone. Z7 was about to cry. His mother, Family Xia, number 6, had successfully gotten married. Why was he the one who was afraid in the end? Why did they have to involve him when they were dating? Couldn't they just let him leave quietly? If I'm not wrong, our captain and Qing Miao are in this kind of relationship. Number 17 pecked her right hand with her left hand and added, It's a kissing relationship. No way, it doesn't seem like it. Why haven't I heard the veterans mention it before? There must be a mistake. I can say that when E6 ran over, I thought he liked Qing Miao and was angry when he saw our captain molesting Qing Miao. He ran over to our captain to settle the score. The new Special Forces soldier was successfully blasted in the back of his head. What are you thinking? Don't say that to our captain. Otherwise, you'll get it. Stop arguing, stop arguing. Let's continue watching. Why did our captain ask Z7 and K7 to go over? I feel like it's going to be more exciting. Let's just watch. Don't comment casually. It's best if we shut up. Shut up, don't say anything. Think about our captain's inhumane methods. The 30 new Special Forces soldiers remained silent out of respect for their captain, Lieutenant Colonel Xia. They didn't say a word and just watched with sparkling eyes. The excitement continued. They couldn't miss it. Weaving Sparrow and White Crane, who were holding hands, stood beside G3 and looked at him thoughtfully. The two of them turned to look at G3, who was standing in the middle, and said in a serious tone, you must know something. You will soon know what I know. Don't talk, the best part is yet to come. She regretted not bringing a bag of melon seeds. Otherwise, she would be able to watch the show while eating melon seed. That's what I call awesome. G3 sighed and shook his head. Without sunflower seeds to munch on, it was less fun. Behind them, T6 and V8 also walked over and sighed in unison. T6 said, I wonder if the three of them will be able to survive tonight. We've been comrades for so many years, so let's remember to pack them up when the time comes so that they can leave with dignity. With Qing Niao around, the ferocious beasts will also turn into cats. Nothing serious will happen. At most, the training will become more difficult. You're right. I was worried for nothing. The show is about to begin. Quick, hold your breath and shut up. Z7 walked up to Lieutenant Colonel Xia. Before he could say anything, Xia Jinyuan smiled and said, My father? Qing Niao's daughter? I was wrong, I admit my mistake. I sincerely admit my mistake. So what if he had a backbone? If it was for survival, he could throw it away. Z7 was willing to throw it away for survival. Xia Jinyuan gave him a creepy smile, and turned to look at K7. He sized him up and sighed. I didn't expect our military doctor to be the final boss. I'm impressed. K7, who had regained his indifference, glanced at him coldly and said, You're welcome. I'm sure the two of you don't know what kind of relationship I have with Yi Qian. Come, take a good look. Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who couldn't get over this hurdle, put his arm around Yi Qian's shoulder and said to her, Baby, I still have to verify your identity. I really don't want to be your father. Close your eyes, give me 5 seconds. Chapter 45-28. As a single man, when E6 heard their captain say, Close your eyes and give me 5 seconds, his brain seemed to have been wound up. As soon as his ears heard it clearly, his brain had already made the judgment of minimizing the damage to a single man. He even spoke before Yi Qian, Captain, we all know, really. Why don't you let everyone disperse first, and you and Qing Niao continue for another 5 seconds? Please let the single man off. If this goes on, there's no need for Captain to punish him. He'll be hurt so badly on the spot. Single men can't stand to see people being lovey-dovey next to them. K7 and Z7 were serious pillars and decided not to say anything more. The more they said, the more mistakes they would make. It was better to keep silent. As for E6, he could say whatever he wanted. After all, he was the one who started it. Spearbird, E6, my good comrade, please continue your performance. Since Xia Jinyuan had decided to make their relationship public today in front of his comrades and eliminate all potential love rivals, in one go, he had to make sure that everything that happened today was engraved in everyone's hearts. Even if they had any thoughts in the future, as long as they thought of today, he wouldn't need to take the initiative to attack. He would just obediently shut the door and crush those thoughts. The veterans were already a little distracted by the only female soldier in the team, not to mention the new comrade. Most importantly, the average age of this group of guys was only 24 years old, a full 3 years younger than him. Comrade Xia Zhongxiao was in the golden age of a man. Just because someone called him old father, he actually felt a sense of age crisis. Yi Qian, who was in his arms, blinked his eyes. Blissfully, he felt that something was wrong. He calmly advised, Captain Xia, calm down. I don't mind either. No, I can't get past this hurdle. Just 5 seconds, just 5 seconds. In 5 seconds, I'll let everyone know that I'm not an old father, but... He put his arms around Yi Qian's shoulders and hugged Yi Qian in an extremely domineering yet gentle manner. He lowered his head and kissed, one after another. Look carefully, look carefully. This group of insensible guys kept causing trouble for him every day, causing him to feel a sense of age crisis. How could an old father kiss like this? He wasn't his baby's old father, he was a man. Friends. Male. Pung. Friends. Yi Jian had already guessed what he might want to do, but when he really did it, she was still stunned. Her black eyes that were so clear that they could reflect the blue sky and the day were wide open. Her lips were kissed by him, and then it was a French kiss. Yi Qian's heart was beating rapidly, and his blood was circulating at an accelerated pace. Perhaps it was because his blood was flowing too fast that it created heat. In an instant, his heart, earlobes, and face were burning red. Oh shit! He kissed her. He kissed her. Damn. He kissed her. Their captain was Qing Niao. Captain is mighty. Oh shit, why are you jumping on me? Get off, I'm not your girlfriend. Let go, you're strangling my neck, I'm going to suffocate. They're a couple. Our captain and Qing Niao are really a couple. They even kissed. Chapter 45-29. Why were they so excited? They had been locked up deep in the mountains for more than 2 years. They watched the news on TV, watched the military channel for entertainment, and even went on vacation from one side of the mountain to the other. They had to study whether a bird was male or female when they caught it. Now that they suddenly saw a live sex scene, even if it was just a simple scene of one onion and 2 white guys kissing, it was the most exciting thing in their eyes. Their hormones went through the roof, and their adrenal corticosteroids erupted like a volcano. They wanted to be calm, but they couldn't. They couldn't stay calm. In fact, the veterans were the same, just slightly more reserved. Bai He, who was standing in front, looked back at the new comrades behind him, who were so excited that they looked like they were hugging and kissing a girl. Embarrassed, he covered his forehead and said helplessly to G3, "The instructor's job must be done properly. The veteran's marriage hasn't been settled yet, and now there's another group of bachelors. Let Q King apply for a few more social gatherings." Of course. You have to hurry up too. I have a wife and a child now. Ha. G3, who had settled his marriage and even had a child, smiled obnoxiously. Bai He rubbed his fist and looked back with a smile. G3 hugged his helmet and patted Bai He's shoulder gently. He glanced at V8, GK, and the other veterans. You're not fighting alone. You're not lonely with someone accompanying you. You've been kissing for more than 10 seconds. Why haven't you let go yet? Bai He released his fist and looked at the hugging and kissing figures in front of him. The breeze was gentle, and the morning sun was just right. It was a good time to relax. If Qing Niao punched their captains back harder, he thought he would be in a better mood. After a few seconds, Xia Jinyuan, who had been punched in the back by Yi Qian, finally ended the kiss that declared his sovereignty. However, it didn't mean it was over. Close your eyes, baby. The man's clean voice came out from his thin lips. Yi Qian, whose face was so red that he looked like he was drunk, didn't even have time to catch his breath before the second kiss came. Yi Qian struggled, but to no avail. He even used his teeth to bite down on the tongue that had entered his mouth. But nothing could stop Lieutenant Colonel Xia's fiery passion. He had no choice. They had been unable to see each other in public for a long time, and they had to be careful when holding hand. Now that they could finally announce it to a small circle, even someone as calm as Xia Jinyuan could not help but feel excited. It was not an ordinary excitement. Moreover, it could be seen from the way he forcefully held the back of Yi Qian's head with one hand and tightly held Yi Qian's slender waist with the other. The two of them kissed again. Z7, who was shocked by the first kiss, shuddered. It was too awesome. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but when he did, it was as fierce as an avalanche. Since the first kiss did not work, he went on to kiss the green bird a second time. He kissed the green bird until she had no strength to resist. He had hit and kicked the green bird, but the bull-like old sixth of the Xia family still continued to kiss and kiss the green bird. The 27-year-old virgin chicken was bold and unrestrained enough. After sighing in his heart, Z7 immediately added, Congratulations, the dark clouds have parted to reveal the bright moon. From now on, you are Yi Qian's boyfriend, and Yi Qian is Xia Jinyuan's girlfriend. From now on, all of us will know. Kiss her properly and kiss her longer. We don't mind at all. At this moment, not only did E6 see it, but the group of comrades who came ashore also saw it. Everyone saw it. They kissed again and again. Qing Miao did not beat up Captain Hai who had molested her. What did it mean? What did it mean? It meant that both of them liked each other, that they were in a relationship, and that they were really boyfriend and girlfriend. Chapter 45-30. The only female soldier in their team, the treasure of the team, Qing Miao, was monopolized by their captain just like that. His kiss wasn't a kiss, it was DDVP, the seed of love, and he got rid of it all in one go. E6 was like a teenager who was peeking through a crack in the door. His face, which had been tanned to the color of wheat due to his training, suddenly turned red with a bang. Too exciting, but also too hurtful. Did he even consider his feelings as a bachelor? Where did the camaraderie go? Where did the brotherhood go? Where did the loyalty that went through life and death go? It was all fed to the dogs. E6, who was deeply hurt, covered his face with both hands and peeked through the gaps between his fingers. TSK. Their captain wasn't human, he was a beast. He clearly said that he would only kiss for 5 seconds, but he still hadn't let go after 3 to 5 seconds. Hey, there's still sound. It's a French kiss. Didn't he see how Qing Miao was fluttering like a little bird? Her little arms were fluttering, ha. Why did he feel like laughing again? E6 covered his face and peeked. Z7, who had finished his narration, was watching with interest. He continued to look at K7, who was still calm and collected despite the exciting scene in front of him. Tsk, did you see that? The sorrow of an old virgin. K7, who was also an old virgin, glanced at Z7's neck. Z7 subconsciously covered his neck, which was as cold as a scalpel, and silently took 3 steps away from K7. The more he spoke, the more mistakes he would make. He forgot that K7 was also a sad old virgin. Yi Qian's arms were sore from pounding, but she couldn't stop Xia Jinyuan's deep kiss. She closed her eyes and was so embarrassed that even her toes curled up. You're having a nosebleed. I'm young and impetuous. I haven't seen a live movie in a long time, so I'm a little agitated. It's okay. I just need to wipe it. Quick, go into the river and splash some cold water to stop the bleeding. If it doesn't work, take a bath. Her voice was so excited that it sounded like a mouse stealing food. It was like a thin thread of ice that floated into Yi Qian's ears bit by bit. Bit by bit, it cleared up Yi Qian's dizzy mind. Without any hesitation, he lifted his foot and stomped Xia Jinyuan's foot with the heel of his military boot. His hands were no longer just hammering his back, but placed on both sides of his waist and twisted. Completely intoxicated by the kiss, Lieutenant Colonel Xia's handsome face contorted as he finally ended the French kiss. After escaping from his evil clutches, Yi Qian was already sweating profusely. She was so shy that she wanted to run away again. However, on second thought, she couldn't let him face it alone. She gritted her teeth and controlled her legs, which were about to run away at any moment, and walked side by side with Xia Jinyuan. Her right hand didn't stay idle. She continued to twist Xia Jinyuan's waist. As she twisted, she maintained a smile and gritted her teeth. Captain Xia, remember this. I'll teach you a lesson when we get back. Yes. You can do whatever you want to me when we get back. You can do whatever you want in bed. I'll obey. Xia Jinyuan, who felt both pain and sweetness, firmly maintained his policy of not resisting or refuting his girlfriend's harsh word. He would do whatever his girlfriend said. He had no choice. He was cruel to her during training, but he had to give in to her in real life. If he didn't listen to her in real life, it would be the same as giving the girlfriend he had spent so much effort to win over to another man. His show of weakness made Yi Qian feel helpless. She glared at him and finally stopped. Xia Jinyuan smiled like a cat that had stolen a fish. He held Yi Qian's hand tightly and said in a clear voice, "Come, come, come, comrades. Let me introduce you. This is my wife. From now on, I'm no longer single and have a wife. Give me a round of applause." Chapter 45-31. As for applause. To be honest, not many of them wanted to give it to him. Even if there was applause, it would be for Qing Niao and Yi Qian. How much courage did it take for her to accept the position of captain? Presumably, they must have avoided him before and wished that this person would disappear. However, the applause still rang out, and it was quite enthusiastic. Some of the 30 new comrades were even clapping and shouting, "Good, good, good. Good, good, good my *SS." As the saying goes, rabbits don't eat the grass near their burrows, but he ate it all. He ate the grass that was the sole seedling. Angry. Applause? Good. Can't you give me a punch? Of course not. In order to survive, they had to do well. Even if they had to grit their teeth, they still had to applaud. Come, come, come. Let's applaud for this historic moment, brothers. E6, who had always been driven by a strong desire to survive, took the lead. He was the first to clap, and he even shouted for all his brothers to clap. Clap, clap, clap. Clap, 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 clap. Clap, clap. The applause was very enthusiastic, but Yi Qian felt that it didn't feel like applause, but more like slaps. They stared at Captain Xiao with a fake smile. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she originally wanted to turn around and run. Captain Xia, you're really asking for a beating. Amidst the tide-like applause, Yi Qian stood on his heels and sighed. Even I want to beat you up, not to mention the comrades you forced to clap for. You're even giving some applause? Shame, Captain Xia, shame on you. The shameless Xia Jinyuan revealed the most standard eight-tooth smile. His handsome face was bright, like the pine trees in the mountain stream, like the bamboo under the moonlight, elegant and noble. I'm happy today. They want to beat me up, but they don't have the guts. He rarely indulged himself. Ever since he joined the army and took over the Snowfield Brigade, he had been restraining himself and being cautious. He was afraid that the slightest mistake would cost him his life. When he took over the 30 recruits, the 30 of them were like 30 mountains pressing down on his shoulders. Even if he couldn't breathe, he had to grit his teeth and continue on. He knew that he would often go abroad to carry out missions, so he took advantage of the time when he was still in the army to fully understand the strengths and weaknesses of the 30 recruits within a week. Then, he arranged for their daily training. Even when he went abroad to hide for nearly a year and a half due to Cobra and did not return to the army, the training of the 30 recruits in the army was never delayed. Day after day, year after year, he would only indulge himself when she was by his side. Little Fox often said that she was lucky to have met him, but in fact, Xia Jinyuan gazed affectionately at her beautiful face. He reached out and gently patted her head. In an instant, the applause reached a climax. He smiled and said, "Now that we have some time, just come back with me." After this short period of time, there would be more than 40 days of high-intensity and life-threatening training. After indulging himself, his heartstrings continued to tighten. He was still the captain of the Snowfield Brigade, still the captain who hit and scolded his own girlfriend during training. It had been a long time since he was so happy and impudent. Just let him rest for a while. He smiled as he spoke, but Yi Jian's heart ached when she heard that. She felt sorry for him. He had always held her hand tightly and had done so much for her. She had to do something and say something for him. She couldn't just let him be the only one singing, she had to respond to him. She loved him deeply, so it was normal for her to respond. Chapter 45-32. Just as he was about to say something, Z7, who was clapping against his will, took advantage of the fact that Xia Jinyuan wasn't paying attention to him. He moved closer to Yi Qian and whispered, "Qing Niao, my applause is for you, not for him. Whether or not we can live a good life depends on you. Please take good care of him. Whether or not we can live to see tomorrow's sunrise depends on you." After offending someone too much, he had no choice but to find someone to back him up. Yi Qian smiled and turned his head. "No, no, no, my man and I will definitely be on the same side. So, brother, if you have the guts to instigate E6 to challenge Captain Xia's temper, you should have the guts to receive Captain Xia's response." "The heavens want me dead." Z7 sighed sadly and clapped even louder and harder. He hoped that the husband and wife of one heart duo would be merciful when they saw how hard he was clapping. He really knew he was wrong. Xia Jinyuan, who was enjoying the warm applause, tightened his grip on Yi Qian's hand after he answered Z7's question. He heard Yi Qian's answer and received a response. He was so intoxicated by the love that he could face together with her. He was willing to be driven by her for the rest of his life. He wanted to keep his life and accompany her for the rest of his life until his hair turned white and he was buried deep in the earth. Yi Qian looked down at their tightly clasped hands and no longer lowered his head out of embarrassment. He took a step forward and raised his head slightly. His clear voice was like a wind chime swaying in the wind, cheerfully drifting into the ears of all his comrades. "Hello, comrades. I'm Yi Qian. From now on, your captain is my man. My man is under my protection. Thank you. My man is under my protection." Such a domineering declaration shocked all his comrades. The applause that never stopped grew louder. Domineering, domineering. As expected of Qing Niao, so domineering. Good, good. Domineering Yi Qian. Yi Qian, if I find a girlfriend in the future, I must find someone like you. I also want to be protected by my wife. Dream on. There's only one Yi Qian. Where are you going to find someone like Yi Qian? Xia Jinyuan was also shocked by his woman's domineering declaration. Oh, why did he feel that it was good to be coaxed? Why did he feel like his body was floating? Happy, there was only one word to describe it. Happy. The most beautiful love in the world was nothing more than receiving a return of deep affection and reciprocating it with deep affection. This time, the applause did not stop for a long time because of Yi Qian's domineering declaration. Although they were disdainful of him, they were all sending their blessings from the bottom of their hearts. They sincerely wished for their captain and comrade to be happy forever. The sky was clear and boundless, and the mountains were majestic. A pair of lovers in camouflage stood side by side between the mountains and the water. They would also fight side by side and climb to the peak together. The applause stopped, and the most lively moment quietly passed. Under the smiling gazes of his comrades, Yi Qian, who had not yet finished washing himself, hugged his helmet and plopped into the river with a red face. His declaration was very domineering, but it did not last long. Now that his tender face was burning red, he urgently needed to calm down. The clear river flowed. Yi Qian bent over to wash his face. He looked at his face reflected in the rippling water. His brows were delicate and beautiful, his eyes were watery, and his lips were red and glistening. He simply did not dare to look at himself any more. He did not dare to look at himself. Yi Qian splashed handfuls of water on his face, hoping that the heat on his face would dissipate quickly. Chapter 45-33. Yi Qian was washing his face in the river, while Xia Jinyuan was surrounded by his comrades. Thousands of words could be summed up into one sentence. Captain Xia, please teach me how to chase a girlfriend. Colonel Xia, who was sitting in the middle, hugged his gun tightly and looked around. He cleared his throat and spoke with an expression that said, First, you have to wear her down until she softens. Then, you have to chase her until she has nowhere to run. Finally, you have to confess to her and make her unable to leave you. Here's my experience. Use it well. Who knows, maybe one day you'll get what you want. That's not right. I used to wear down a girl too. In the end, the girl said to me, "Can you stop being so annoying?" I was so hurt that I didn't dare to chase girls anymore. Z7, you have a lot of experience in love. Come and teach him. Xia Jinyuan didn't really want to tell his comrades about his and Yi Qian's love story. This was a private matter that belonged to him and his wife. He couldn't say it. Colonel Xia, who was still acting like he had a lot of experience, immediately asked Z7 to come out. How to chase a girl. He really didn't have any experience. All his experience was used on Yi Qian, but it was only effective on Yi Qian. This was because he only bowed and spoke to Yi Qian. He didn't care about other girls, nor did he give them a second glance. Just like that, Z7 was pushed out and became the love consultant for the 30 new comrades. Xia Jinyuan stood up and left the discussion. He stood up, and a few of the old soldiers stood up as well. I'm really shocked today. I really didn't expect you and Yi Qian to be a couple. He rubbed his temples, indicating that he still hadn't digested the shocking news. It's too sudden. Captain, did you just catch up with Yi Qian and were afraid that she would run away? So you quickly announced your relationship with her? Xia Jinyuan replied with a smile. You're wrong. She confessed to me when she was in her second year of high school, and we were together when she graduated from high school. We've been together for more than 3 years. He confessed to Yi Qian when she was still in her second year of high school. They got together the year they graduated. V8 held back for a long time before spitting out 2 words to express her feelings. Beast. If you don't act like a beast, are you going to wait for your love rival to line up? Make your move when you need to, or you'll regret it. Xia Jinyuan took the word, beast, calmly and said, Luckily, I managed to get Yi Qian in time. Otherwise, I'd be single like you. Don't call me a beast. You should be a beast for once too. The T6 combatants are already engaged, so you have to hurry up. V8 was speechless. He didn't want to talk anymore. The white crane was gentle, it could not bring itself to scold people, so it could only shut its mouth and not say anything else. He had great foresight and could only be admired. GK didn't want to say anything either. He didn't see any signs, not even a little bit. He even discussed who would pluck Qing Miao, but he never considered that their captain was the flower thief. Sneaky, too sneaky. Sorry, I didn't tell you guys before. I'm sorry, brothers. She's shy, and saying those words in front of us today has already exhausted all her courage. Brothers, for my sake, don't disturb her. I'm afraid she'll feel awkward. They walked upstream, away from their comrades who were sitting in a circle. They stood together and looked at the undulating snowy mountains in the distance, listening to Xia Jinyuan's sincere request. For a moment, he was the only one who spoke, and the rest of the veterans listened quietly. Chapter 45-34. Xia Jinyuan deliberately passed the topic to Z7 and gave him a look before he left. He wanted to take the time to tell the veterans what he was thinking. They were all brothers who had gone through life and death with him. There were some things that he had to say clearly. There was a reason for this. After hiding it for so many years, he definitely had to apologize to them. Once he said it clearly, they would naturally understand why he had kept it a secret for so long. I still have to ask you guys to help me remind them not to say too much. I'm afraid they don't know what's important. It's obviously a good thing, but it sounds sour and makes her angry. When the time comes, I'll probably have to kneel down and apologize. They all listened carefully and nodded solemnly, indicating that they would take it seriously. In the end, he said, I'll probably have to kneel down and apologize. Instantly, the veterans couldn't help but laugh. He punched him on the shoulder and laughed. Alright, I know you're a henpecked husband, so I'll leave you some face. I'd like to see you kneel down. I hope I have the chance to watch the whole process. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and glanced at Ji Quebec. Don't think too much about unrealistic things. You don't have much of a brain to begin with. I'm afraid you'll have to drink brain tonic in advance. Captain Xia, how did you manage to get Yi Qian? How did you get such a good girl into your hands? With that mouth of yours, you should be single for the rest of your life. GK glared at him. Xia Jinyuan threw his head back and laughed. Brother, I've used all my strength and tenderness on her. Tell me, how many good things can I say to you guys? Alright, let's all disperse. We can't continue chatting. The more we talk, the more our hearts ache. I want to find a girlfriend. I want to find a girlfriend too. Let's find a girlfriend together. Oh damn, I don't want to find a girlfriend with you guys. Having a girlfriend together is too scary. You're asking for a beating. Beat him with all your might. The sun was shining brightly. A group of iron-blooded men, who had fought for their country, stood at the foot of the mountain ridge. They put their hands on each other's shoulders and raised their heads towards the edge of the mountain, towards the end of the sky. They shouted until their faces turned red, until they bent down, and until their laughter was as clear as a spring under the moonlight. It was a happy day, and it passed quickly. The Special Forces soldiers who were already in the bulletproof transport vehicles held their rifles tightly in their hands. Xia Jinyuan was driving while Yi Jian sat in the front passenger seat. Their eyes met occasionally and they couldn't help but smile. This was really good. The sun began to set in the west, and a big red fireball was right in front of the vehicles. 5 bulletproof military transport vehicles chased after the sun, tireless. Someone stood on the weathered rock and set up a camera to find the best position to take the most beautiful picture of the sun in the west. Suddenly, a car broke into the frame. From the perspective of the camera, the car just happened to break into the center of the red sun and was driving side by side with the sun. Gotcha! Gotcha! The person taking the photo kept pressing the shutter, taking one photo after another. Then, she put away her expensive camera and jumped away from the rock. She quickly found another shooting spot. This time, she had the scenery of 5 cars in the same frame. One was the setting sun and the other was the cars. Although it was not the desert, it was a magnificent scenery in the desert. In the car, Xia Jinyuan put away his binoculars and turned on the microphone. On the right, someone is taking photos. Go and see who it is. Chapter 45-35. The 5 bulletproof military transport vehicles were heading towards the Gobi Desert. They arrived at the helicopter landing site around noon and took the helicopter before driving the vehicles to the Gobi Desert. They were just about to enter the Gobi Desert. The Gobi Desert was covered by coarse sand and gravel. It was rough, desolate, and the dry surface was blown by the wind. It was a deserted place where most soldiers trained in the wild. It was rare for someone to come and take photos, let alone chase after their vehicle. As a professional soldier, Xia Jinyuan immediately ordered the members of the 5th vehicle to check it out. If it was an ordinary photographer, he would ask them to leave. If it was someone with ulterior motives, he would send them to jail for 10 days to half a month before interrogating them. The members of the 5th vehicle received Xia Jinyuan's order and immediately replied, "Roger that. Target locked. Turn right and leave." Roger that. The 5th bulletproof military transport vehicle turned right at a mountain fork and headed towards their target. Yi Jian fell into a deep sleep. She did not know what had happened. She had been tired for the past few days, and there was such an exhausting scene during the day. She could not bear it anymore. Although the Gobi scenery was spectacular, she slept soundly with the rocking of the car. After the 5th vehicle left, the rest of the vehicles stopped to refuel. Yi Qian, who was sleeping with her gun, suddenly woke up. Her first reaction was to jump out of her seat and ask, "Why did you stop?" "Someone chased after our vehicle and took photos. Let's go take a look." Xia Jinyuan pulled the handbrake. Seeing that her helmet was tilted to one side and there was a sleeping mark on her left cheek from the straps of the helmet, he couldn't help curling his thin lip. He smiled and reached out to help her put on the helmet. "Did you sleep well? If not, continue sleeping. It's not a big deal. It'll be solved soon." Yi Qian jumped back into her seat and yawned. She stretched her arms and legs and said with a smile, "I'm not sleeping anymore. I've slept for a few hours. Let's get out and see the Gobi Desert scenery." "Okay, let's get out and stretch." No matter what she said, Xia Jinyuan nodded. His eyes were filled with so much affection that Yi Qian did not dare to look at him directly. He even reminded him softly, "Captain Xia, don't look at me like that. You've attracted enough hatred today. If this continues, I'm really worried that I won't be able to protect you." Xia Jinyuan, who was about to open the door and get out of the car, sat back down and leaned towards Yi Qian again. He was so agile that every move he made was quick and fierce. Yi Qian was startled and thought that he was going to do something in the car. He hid in the corner of the car door. Instead of dodging, Xia Jinyuan loosened his seatbelt and raised his hand. He gently pinched the tip of her delicate nose and said arrogantly, "I'll protect you." Very arrogant, very Xia Jinyuan. "Don't overthink it. I know what to do." Pinching the tip of her nose and patting her helmet, the young lieutenant colonel pushed open the car door and got out of the car in an extremely handsome manner. Yi Qian, whose eyes moved slightly, pursed his lips and smiled. He also got out of the car. She would not tell him that she was shocked by his handsome action of getting out of the car just now. She would just keep it to herself and be happy about it. At this time, the sun had already set and only half of the sun was visible. With the half of the sun as the center, large patches of golden sunlight spread out like Buddha's light. However, the area it illuminated was limited. The surrounding area was already covered in smoke, and the night was invading. Yi Qian, who was leaning against the front of the car, opened the military water bottle and drank a few mouthfuls of snow water from the river. The cold snow water that entered his mouth seemed to carry the fragrance of snow, making him feel refreshed. Chapter 45-36. At the end of the sky, the undulating hills were surrounded by a golden border. Finally, in the sky they could see the hills connected, rippling up and down. The wind blew sand from the other side of the mountains, bringing with it a whooshing sound that seemed to come from ancient times. As the wind and sand rose, they seemed to see thousands of soldiers and horses galloping, opening a magnificent chapter that belonged only to this place. The place where they stopped was considered a desert oasis, surrounded by low, spiky shrubs that grew here and there. Soft sounds came from the shrubs, and Yi Qian, who was blown by the wind and sand, couldn't help but squint his eyes and look in the direction of the sound. He saw two sand hoppers flapping their short legs, eating the fruit from the shrubs quickly. There were many species of small animals in the desert oasis, and sand hoppers were the most common. If they were lucky, they could also see wolves. The road they took had border checkpoints, and there was almost no sign of human habitation in front of them. Therefore, there were many more small animals in the oasis than in the oasis where tourists could visit. Even their courage seemed to be a lot bigger. The sound of footsteps came. Yi Qian, who was leaning against the front of the car, didn't need to turn around to know who was coming. He pointed at the two sand hoppers that hadn't left yet and said with a smile, "Shouldn't they be timid? Why are the sand hoppers so bold here?" "They didn't see you, so of course they're bold," Xia Jinyuan said. Two sand hoppers, which were about 2 meters away from them, fled into the depths of the forest like arrows. They fled very fast, leaving behind a trail of sand smoke. Yi Qian laughed and glanced at the approaching man. "Come here and scare them away. If you like, I'll catch a few for you to play with and make dinner." It was impossible to prepare their own food in advance for dozens of days of training in the desert. Except for the water that would be airdropped, the rest of the food would be eaten on the day of hunting. Wild rabbits and snakes could be eaten, but whether it was too cruel or not was not within the scope of consideration. They were willing to protect small animals, but in order to survive, they had to save their own strength. The team members who were resting had already gone into the bushes to look for food to fill their stomachs for the night. With their skills, it wouldn't take long for them to return with a bountiful harvest. Wherever they went, all the small animals within a radius of a few kilometers all fled, not daring to come close. The fiery red sun had completely set, and the sky was about to turn dark. The blowing dust seemed to be even stronger than before. Further away on the mountain, there was a huge cloud of gray wind that seemed to be rolling something over. Xia Jinyuan, who was leaning against the front of the car with Yi Qian, originally had a satisfied smile on his face, but in the next second, his face suddenly darkened. He turned around and supported himself with both hands on the front of the car to climb up to the steel door. After observing for a few seconds, he said to Yi Qian in a deep voice, "Give me the binoculars." Yi Qian immediately moved aside, opened the car door, and took out his binoculars. Xia Jinyuan took the binoculars and looked at the sky for about 30 seconds. Then he jumped up from the front of the car and said, "There's a sandstorm. Get in the car." "Sandstorm?" Yi Qian's eyes narrowed as he answered, "Yes, sir." He quickly jumped into the car with his gun. She had never driven a bulletproof military transport vehicle before, so she could only continue to sit in the passenger seat. Xia Jinyuan didn't get into the car immediately. Instead, he informed all the team members to gather immediately. The team members who went to the bushes to get dinner for the night hadn't returned yet. Xia Jinyuan climbed onto the roof of the car, raised his rifle, and fired 3 warning shots into the sky. The heavy gunshots startled the team members who left the team. 3 warning shots was a code for leaving the team during training. It meant that something had happened. The 6 team members didn't waste a second. They picked up the sandhoppers and snakes they caught and ran back to the team. Xia Jinyuan contacted the team members of the 5th car and asked about the situation. Chapter 45-37. The T6 combatants' laughter could be heard over the wireless headset. "Captain, something very, very interesting has happened here. I'll tell you about it when we get back." "Ha ha, I can laugh for a year." "No, it's our brothers who came here who can laugh for a year." "A sandstorm is approaching. Quickly return to the team." Xia Jinyuan did not laugh. The sandstorm was approaching at high speed, and they happened to be at the bottleneck where the sandstorm was closing in. It was very likely that the sandstorm would turn into a sandstorm tornado, and the sandstorms in the Gobi Desert could really be so powerful that they could send cattle, sheep, and humans flying. "Yes, sir." The T6 combatant, who was laughing so hard a second ago, stopped and said seriously, "5 vehicles, return to the team immediately. Return to the team, return to the team. A sandstorm is approaching. Everyone, return to the team." The 5 vehicles were not far away, and soon, the sound of wheels rolling over gravel could be heard coming from the narrow brown hills. The 5 vehicles arrived and quickly drove away from the bottleneck of the Gobi Desert. When the 5th vehicle returned to the team, Xia Jinyuan asked around and found out that it was not a spy but a cameraman with an access pass. His surname was Qin, and he probably had a powerful background. Otherwise, how could he have gotten an access pass to this restricted military zone? Xia Jinyuan was not afraid of having a powerful background. He just found it troublesome. As he drove, he frowned and said, "It's not convenient for us to bring her along. We'll send her back to where we came from after the sandstorm passes." After a slight pause, he added, "Find the nearest shelter. Bringing an outsider along would be a big problem for them." If they hadn't caught up with the sandstorm and released her on the spot, they would have just gone wherever they were supposed to go and ignored her. But the sandstorm had come at such a coincidental time that it was impossible for them to sit back and do nothing about it. They could only lead the team back to the team first. Yi Qian did not pay much attention to it. These matters were all handled by the captain. The T6 combatant, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was still laughing until his neck turned red. "Captain, I'm telling you, something big is going to happen this time." The cameraman took a liking to V8 on the spot and made a scene of him snatching an innocent man in front of our brothers. Xia Jinyuan slammed on the brakes on the spot. The terrain ahead was uneven to begin with, and the car was bumping along the way. When he slammed on the brakes, everyone in the car fell forward. Yi Qian even fell so hard that he had to hold on the dashboard with both hands to prevent himself from hitting his head. What happened? With a dark expression, Xia Jinyuan stepped on the accelerator again and looked for a shelter nearby. "Have you confirmed her identity?" Xia Jinyuan couldn't be blamed for being suspicious. Why would he bother V8 all of a sudden? "The identity has been confirmed and the documents are complete. As for what happened, none of us understood. Not to mention, she's quite pretty. I don't know how she got entangled with Six, but he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Even now, he's still saying in my ear why I didn't ask him to capture that girl back then. It was such a good opportunity, but he gave it to V8 for nothing." The T6 combatants slapped their thighs and laughed maniacally. The E6, who was driving, had a look of resentment on his face. The back of the car was bustling with activity. The 7 Special Forces soldiers looked at each other and lowered their heads, laughing until their stomachs cramped. The pitiful V8 was struggling in its death throes. "Sit further away, sit further away. Men and men. There are differences between men and women. If you're like this, I can't hold a gun. Madam, I'm begging you, please sit up straight. You're still squeezing, you're almost squeezing me out of the car. Madam, what are you trying to do? Can a fainted person move like you? Don't pretend anymore, I'm begging you. Brother, can I switch seats with you? I have no place to sit. Don't hug my arm, you let go. My gun, my gun." Chapter 45-38. The sound of V8 struggling could be heard throughout the vehicle. He did not dare to be too loud for fear of being seen by his comrades, but the more he did so, the more he was bullied. "Have you fainted yet? Stop pretending, sit up straight. Oh my God, I'm scared of you, I'm really scared of you. It was my fault just now, I shouldn't have been so ruthless. I apologize, please sit up straight." His comrade V8's pleas for mercy came from the bulletproof military vehicle, and there was even a rare shyness. How could he not be shy? He was suspected of being a spy, but in the end, he was blamed. They were really putting the blame on him, putting all the blame on him. Hugging and hugging. If not for him, he would have been molested by her just now. 10 minutes ago, V8, who was wearing sunglasses and had a cold expression and a murderous aura, circled behind the suspected spy from the back and took him down in one fell swoop. His movements were fast and fierce. Even if he could tell that it was a woman, V8 did not show any mercy. He pinned the person down with both hands behind her back and said fiercely, "Don't move, I'll cripple you." At this moment, V8 was very manly and had a strong aura. After his comrades quickly checked the person's luggage, documents, and even the computer carefully, then V8 was embarrassed. She was not a spy, but a proper cameraman who had obtained permission to enter and leave. In addition to a bunch of scenery photos on the computer, there were also war photos. 8 members were deployed. V8 was in charge of the capture, 2 were on guard, 2 stayed behind, 2 checked the luggage, and 1 assisted V8. In the end, V8 was the only one who treated the cameraman named Qining very rudely. V8 let go awkwardly. Holding steel guns and wearing sunglasses, the 8 people lined up to apologize to the cameraman, Qi Ning. At the same time, they told her that she could not chase after their vehicle to take photos, as it would be easy to misunderstand that she was a spy. Who was Qi Ning? She was a sister who carried equipment all over the country alone. She wiped the dust and sand off her face and stared coldly at the soldier who suddenly appeared. She walked up to V8 without saying a word and only said, "It was you just now, right?" She raised her sand boot and kicked V8's calf. V8 wanted to take it, but he didn't expect her kick to be so powerful, so he dodged it. After dodging, the woman in front of him sneered and pounced on him like an octopus. "Hide? You want to press me down until I eat dust? Do you still have the face to hide? I told you to hide, I told you to hide." Qi Ning, who had pounced on V8 valiantly, used her unique skill in close combat, and her fists rained down on V8. The T6 combatants had never seen such close combat before, so they were all dumbfounded. V8 was also dumbfounded. He was still holding a gun in his hand, and this woman had pounced on him without any regard for her life. Her legs were hooked around his waist, and it was as if she was riding on him. The feminine softness rubbed against him, causing him to lean back repeatedly to avoid being wrongly accused of taking advantage of her later. He dodged, but she hit him even harder. In the end, she hit him so hard that even his helmet fell off. After the helmet fell off, the scene suddenly changed, and it became like this, and now a domineering woman bullying a man. He squeezed, dodged, and shrunk toward the car door. He was clearly a tall man who was more than 1.8 meters tall, and he had practiced bone-shrinking skills. He shrunk his shoulders, abdomen, arms, and legs. He was already like this, but in the end, he still couldn't get rid of this woman beside him. In the end, V8 really had no choice. His hand touched the door lock handle, and with a heroic expression, he once again warned the cameraman who would sit on his lap if he squeezed any further. "If you continue like this, I'll jump out of the car. I'm telling you, I'll really jump out of the car." Chapter 45-39. Everyone in the car, including all their comrades, heard it. V8's wireless communicator had been accidentally turned on when he was dodging, and the news of him jumping out of the car was transmitted to everyone's ears through the public channel. They were all stunned. What was going on? Jumping out of the car? What were the brothers of the 5th car doing? Other than the brothers of the 5th car, who knew what was going on, only Xia Jinyuan knew why V8 jumped out of the car. He wanted to keep a straight face but failed. His mouth twitched a few times, and he said helplessly to Yi Qian, "The cameraman who just got into the car took a liking to V8, and now it's said that he's relying on V8 the whole time. How strong must he be to force V8 to jump out of the car?" Yi Jian could not help but laugh when she heard that. "That can't be. Is there another reason? They didn't hurt the cameraman just now, right? Why don't you stop the car? I'll sit over and ask. It'll be more convenient to ask since they're all women. Also, she's sitting alone with 8 big men. She's not familiar with them at all. If it were me, I'd be embarrassed too. Relying on V8 and even forcing V8 to jump out of the car, ahem." Although V8 said he wanted to jump, it was hard to believe that it was the cameraman who forced V8 to jump. There must be other reasons. "The sandstorm is fierce, let's find a place first." Xia Jinyuan did not agree. Time was of the essence, everything had to wait until they got out of the car. In the end, V8 did not jump out of the car. Qi Ning, who had been tough all the way, laughed out loud and let V8 off the hook. There was no hurry, there was still time. "I'm sorry, I have a problem. I feel guilty after hitting someone, so I need to find a sense of security. I'm sorry for causing you trouble." Qi Ning was back to normal now. She brushed her hair and apologized sincerely with a proper attitude. She smiled at V8. "I'm sorry for making things difficult for you, please forgive me." Qi Ning, who was wearing a pair of slightly tight-fitting light blue denim trousers, a white shirt and a pair of light brown sand boots, apologized generously. Her wild and elegant temperament made the Special Forces soldiers who were watching the whole process clear their throats and reply, "It's okay, they were in the wrong first," and so on. What else could V8 say? As a man, he could not say that he was taken advantage of by a woman. He shifted his body uncomfortably and said calmly with a straight face, "Just sit still, you don't have to apologize to us. Just don't squeeze onto him again." Qi Ning raised her eyebrows and turned her head to look over. Her makeup was clean, and she had only lightly drawn her eyebrows. She stretched out her fair hand and smiled. "Then let's shake hands and make peace. Let's forget about our mistakes just now." V8 stared at the pair of white hands and pursed his lips awkwardly. In the end, he freed up a pair of hands to hold them. The contrast between black and white made the white look even whiter, and the black made the black look even darker. After a light handshake, Qi Ning was the first to withdraw her hand. She did not get close to the V8 all the way to the shelter, nor did she make any rude movements. On the contrary, she didn't ask anything that she shouldn't have. She only asked where the equipment was placed before she took out her phone and quietly played the game, Gluttonous Snake, until they got out of the car. The door opened and V8 was the first to get out of the car. Usually, his comrades would take care of themselves when they got out of the car, so they didn't need to support each other. V8 naturally did the same. Just as he took half a step forward, he suddenly smelled a faint floral perfume on his body. He retracted his half step and turned around. She raised her head and looked at the cameraman who was about to get out of the car. She stretched out her hand and said unnaturally, "Get out of the car." Qi Ning smiled and jumped out of the car before saying, "Thank you, it's not high." Then, his comrades who got out of the car winked at V8. V8 secretly lifted his foot and squeezed out a word through his mouth. Scram. Chapter 4540. V8, who was carrying a gun, was so embarrassed that he only wanted to stay away from this photographer with a strong personality. He could not take it at all and did not dare to stay with her. The car drove for about 3 kilometers and turned into a shelter. The sandstorm from the sky was right in front of them, and there was already a layer of yellow dust on the windshield of the car. "Get out of the car, get out of the car." Xia Jinyuan jumped out of the car first. Then the door opened and 8 comrades quickly got out of the car. The rest of the cars stopped and got out of the car immediately. When the sandstorm arrived, the sky was filled with yellow sand. V8 said to Qi Ning, "The sandstorm will arrive soon. Go up quickly." Qi Ning looked at the young officer, who had a cold expression under the helmet, and pointed to the team member, who was holding the camouflage cloth. Her expression was the same as before and she said calmly, "I know. Go quickly." To be able to carry such heavy equipment and run to the deserted Gobi to take photos alone, V8 glanced at her and did not say anything else. He picked up the rifle and immediately went to do his own thing. In order to not be covered by the sand, all 5 cars had to be covered. Qi Ning did not go up alone. She stood in the yellow sand less than a meter away from the view of the young officers and waited for them to throw the camouflage cloth over. She also joined them and tightened the camouflage cloth that was dancing in the wind to cover the cars tightly. V8 tied the rope to the wheel and was about to tie it to the second wheel when he saw a woman kneeling on the ground. She pulled the rope tightly and her body went under the wheel. Then she stuffed the rope out of the gap between the rims and fastened it to the other end. She did it alone without any help. After she was done, she did not say anything and ran to the shelter with one hand covering her eyes. V8 frowned, took off his helmet and quickly caught up. He said, "Sorry," and put the helmet on Qi Ning's head. Then, he wrapped one hand around the back of her neck and hugged her shoulders tightly to protect her all the way to the shelter. Yellow sand whizzed through the air. There were also many gravel mixed in the sand that smashed into the helmet. The V8 that was not wearing a helmet was hit on the forehead by the sharp gravel. Blood flowed out in a zigzag pattern, but it was blocked by the yellow sand that hit his face. It actually had the effect of stopping the bleeding. V8 did not make a sound even when he was bleeding. Qining had been hit by the gravel twice, so she knew that the young officer who had been running with her in his arms, and whom she had been looking for 5 years, must have been hit in the head or even injured. 5 years, 5 years. How many days and nights had it been? That photo she had taken had to be developed several times a year, and the edges of the first photo would eventually be worn out by her fingers until the color faded. Now, she had a photo album in her backpack. It was filled with photos of him alone, and it was also the only photo she had. The number of photos she had developed over the past 5 years was the number of photos in the album. Even if it was worn out, she could not bear to throw it away. She couldn't find him after a long time, and they didn't meet again after a long time. It was as if he didn't exist in this world. She was so late that she thought she would have to wait for another 10 years. Never would he have thought that there would be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. He was forced to get married by his family's empress and fled to the Gobi to relax. While he was at it, he took a few sets of photos for his living expenses. Who would have thought that he would inadvertently run into her again? She couldn't find him no matter where she looked, but once again she accidentally bumped into him. How could he not be excited? He was so excited that he did not care about a woman's modesty. She hugged his head and kissed him fiercely. She originally wanted to kiss his mouth, but she stopped abruptly and kissed his face. Kissing his face was enough to make her drunk from excitement. She was really drunk. She was so drunk that she could not believe that she had really run into him. She was so drunk that she pestered him all the way, but secretly she kept pinching her thighs to confirm that she was not dreaming. It was not a dream, it was not a dream. She pinched her thighs as proof that she was not dreaming. Chapter 45-41. Although the him in the car was a little different from the him in the photo, the moment he grabbed her and the moment he hugged her just now, he was the Chinese soldier in the photo who was covered in bloodlust and had the unyielding spirit of never giving in. She confirmed that he was the person she was looking for. Is everyone here? Is everyone here? Get into teams and count the number of people. G3 rushed in and shouted loudly. Just as he finished shouting, T6's tense voice was heard. My team is still short of V8 and that cameraman. Just as he finished speaking, V8's voice was heard. Reporting. T6 immediately let go of his grip. The cameraman who was supposed to be the first to come up was nowhere to be seen, which made him a little worried. Now that the two of them had come together, they were safe and sound. The comrades in the first car were in the innermost part of the naturally sunken cave. Yi Qian was patting the dust off her face and body. Xia Jinyuan patted the yellow sand off her back and said in a low voice, "Go and find out more about her situation. Tell her that, after the sandstorm passes, immediately send her back to where she came from." Okay. Yi Qian nodded. After patting the yellow sand off her back, he patted Xia Jinyuan, who was also covered in yellow sand. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, the two of them deliberately chose a dark corner. In addition, the yellow sand outside covered the moon and there was no light at all, so the two of them were practically invisible. With the darkness as a screen, there was an intimacy between their actions that only lovers could have. No one came to disturb them. Everyone patted the yellow sand off each other's bodies. Clap, clap, clap. The sound of patting could be heard continuously, but no one spoke. Because Qining was there. Let them treat your head injury. Thank you for just now. Qin Ying's calm voice could be heard from the patting of clothes. She was very calm, as if she was an independent woman who had experienced a lot and did not care about the smallest things. Her voice drifted from the front to the back. Yi Qian's patting paused slightly. His eyes narrowed slightly as he tried to recall where he had heard this somewhat familiar woman's voice before. He patted the yellow sand off Xia Jinyuan's back slowly and slowly recalled until he remembered. Captain Xia, I've seen her before. You've seen her before? Where? Xia Jinyuan suddenly turned around. Were you patted too? No, I saw her at the airport. She's Qin Xiu's sister. Yi Qian was also right. After going around in circles, Ms. Qin, who they suspected of being a spy and then a photographer, was actually Qin Xiu's older sister. If she was Qin Xiu's sister, then there was basically no problem. He still couldn't follow them. Those who needed to be sent away had to be sent away. You don't have to show yourself. Leave when the wind stops. Take a break. Xia Jinyuan did not plan to let Yi Qian meet Qining. It was better to stay away from the sister of his love rival. Yi Qian smiled and grunted, as if he had seen through his intentions. V8, who had taken the helmet from Qining, grunted softly before turning around to get T6 to help him wipe the wound on his forehead. He did not ask Qining how she knew he had a wound on his forehead. Firstly, it was awkward, secondly, it was unnatural, and thirdly, he was still feeling shy. Qining could feel that the young officer was very uncomfortable with her. He was like a young man and even spoke with a hint of nervousness. TSK, what a naive soldier. It was better to let her keep such a naive soldier so that he wouldn't be harmed by others. After searching for him for 5 years and meeting him again, he was harmed by another woman. She might as well just shave her hair and become a nun instead of getting married. No matter how smart V8 was, there was no way he would allow himself to be targeted like this. He also did not expect that after he had asked him to find a girlfriend during the day, he would be pestered in the evening. V8, who did not think much of it, was still focused on staying away from Qining. Chapter 45-42. After patting off the yellow dust on her body, Qining did not immediately look for V8. She was still very excited. She clearly had a lot of things to say to the young officer she had been searching for 5 years. She had clearly spent countless nights thinking about what she should say if they met again one day and what kind of good impression she should leave on him. In the end, Qining, who silently wiped off the yellow dust on her face, recalled her previous actions. Even though she had always been carefree, she could not help but cover her face in regret. She had been a little too enthusiastic just now. She did not know if she had scared that naive Special Forces soldier away. He was probably scared. He even said that he wanted to jump out of the car. So what if he was scared? She would not give up just because he was scared. 5 years. 5 years. 5 years. Only this man's figure was in her mind. For 5 years, every time she woke up from her dreams, she would see that man's eyes. Giving up was impossible. The sandstorm outside was frighteningly large. They were already in a good position to shelter from the wind, but there was still sand pouring in. Qining, who was standing quietly by the side, gradually realized that something was wrong. This group of well-trained soldiers were all like mute. They had not made a sound since they came in. It was probably not that they did not make a sound, but that they communicated very softly. Because of her presence, they had no choice but to communicate softly. If they did not communicate, how could she find out the personal information of the young officer she had a crush on for 5 years? Without personal information, it would be good to know which army he served in. The Special Forces soldiers who communicated in secret tidied themselves up. G3 was in charge of arranging for people to be on guard, while V8 took the initiative to stand guard. G3 laughed until the corners of his eyes were about to cramp. He said in a low voice, "Weren't you still talking about finding a girlfriend during the day? Why are you so timid now? There are 7 or 8 people standing there. Of all the people to ride, she just had to ride on you. Young man, you're shining brightly." Nonsense. That's because I pressed her down. She took revenge on me. V8 was unmoved and said carefully, Don't say anything in front of her. I still have some dignity. I won't say anything, but I want to ask you, is she your type? I know that Yi Qian is not your type. G3 had not been a comrade for many years for nothing. He hit the nail on the head. V8 was silent for a while before he laughed. Don't mess with me. It doesn't matter if I'm a guy, but she's a girl. Her reputation is very important. Alright, I'll go stand guard. You guys can rest. He didn't say that he liked it, but he didn't say that he didn't like it either. G3 thought to himself and deliberately provoked him. You don't like this, you don't like that. Could it be that you like Yi Qian? F***ck. I still want to live for a few more years. V8 jumped up like a grasshopper. Without wasting any more words, he ran away with his gun. Yi Qian was not bad. Her personality and temper were very good, but she had a cold aura about her. She would be good as a comrade, but as a girlfriend, Captain Xia's girlfriend was the most suitable. Not everyone could be loved by everyone. Everyone had their own preferences. No matter how outstanding Yi Qian was, she was not V8's ideal girlfriend. Of course, Yi Qian did not need any other men to express their love for her. What kind of person did V8 like? G3 thought about V8's first few months in the army. If it wasn't for his strong abilities, J5 would have almost sent him back to his original army. He was very timid and didn't dare to communicate with others. His voice was as soft as a mosquito's. If it wasn't for the male written on his gender, one would really think that he was a girl. Chapter 45-43. Later, V8 said that it was because his family had been strict since he was a child. He was so strict that he only knew how to study and didn't even have the right to make friends. Joining the army was V8's biggest resistance to his parent. Even now, V8 still had a grudge against his family. His other comrades all went home when they were on leave, but V8 would only take the initiative to give up his leave and tell Captain Xia very clearly that he didn't want to go home at all. He had tried to talk to him many times, but the only reply he got was, "The army is his home, and he's very happy." Going home was torture for him, and he didn't want to go through it again. Later, Major General Yang personally called V8's home. No one knew what he said, but Major General Yang said to the team, "From now on, the military will be his home, and you will be his family. No one is to persuade him to come home to visit." That conversation was a mystery, and even Captain Xia couldn't get an answer. V8 was more lonely than anyone else. As his comrades, they had always hoped that he could find a warm and gentle girl who could soften his loneliness. Someone like the cameraman who made V8 blush would be great. She was so warm, so cheerful, and even took the initiative. G3 really wanted to pack V8 up and give it to Qining. Before giving it away, he needed to confirm whether the beautiful cameraman had any thoughts about V8. G3 turned around and told Xia Jinyuan his thoughts. Xia Jinyuan had met Qining a few times, so it wasn't convenient for him to show his face. After listening, he thought for a while and smiled. Qinying's background is a bit big. Her mother is very particular about family background, but Qining has always been at odds with her mother. We can give it a try, but we have to ask Qining first. Get T6 to come over and I'll ask him again. We have to do everything properly, we can't make V8 lose face. V8's personal situation was special, so he had to handle it carefully. Yi Qian's understanding of V8's personal situation was limited to the person himself, but she didn't know about his family situation. When she heard this, she frowned slightly and said worriedly, "Why don't I feel confident? I've met Mother Qin before, and she's a very controlling mother. This concerns Qinying's marriage, so she definitely won't let Qining off. If Qining really takes a fancy to V8, V8 will slowly be tempted, but Mother Qin will come out and break them up. Captain Xia, let's not do bad things with good intentions." Qining has never been satisfied with the arrangements made by her family. She has carved out a path for herself. As long as she doesn't give up, the Qin family can't do anything to her. Xia Jinyuan held Yi Qian's hand and gently stroked the back of her hand with his fingers. He continued, "Not everyone is as lucky as us to receive the blessings of their elders. If the two of them really do get together, with their deep-rooted resistance to their family, they won't give up. That's right. Not everyone was as lucky as her and Captain Xia. Some relationships showed their true feelings after going through ups and downs, while some relationships could not withstand the slightest bit of wind and rain. If the two of them really got together, she hoped that the two of them would be the former." However, Yi Qian sighed softly and smiled bitterly. "Why do you think the two of them can give it a try? It was an unpleasant first meeting. It's hard for me to imagine that Qining has a good impression of V8. It was too baffling. So I need to find T6 to confirm the situation again before taking the next step." Xia Jinyuan narrowed his eyes slightly, and there was a hint of helplessness in his clear voice. "We can't let go of any small situation. We have to give it a try. Otherwise, they would all be old bachelors." Chapter 45-44. T6 quickly came over. When he found out that even their captain wanted to pair up with the photographer and V8, his brain replayed everything that happened in detail. Xia Jinyuan, who listened carefully, simplified the complicated story and picked out the essence of it. He said with interest, "You said that Qining pounced on V8 and hit him until his helmet fell off." Qining was stunned for a moment before she hugged V8 and kissed him. T6 was overjoyed. Yes, we were all dumbfounded when she kissed him. Although it had been a long time, T6 still felt very happy when he thought of that scene. Unexpectedly, he really did not expect that V8 would have such a day. When the two of them became partners back then, Captain Xia had asked him seriously in private, hoping that his craziness would affect V8 and let this loveless child feel gentleness and the love of his family. At that time, he really wanted to beat up the airborne captain who had been making arrangements for him for less than a month and had even said that he was crazy. After a long period of testing, it was proven that the airborne captain did have some skills. Now V8, who lacked love, could finally laugh out loud. He was no longer a child who lacked love. Now that he had caught the eye of a beautiful photographer, T6 wanted to pair up more than any of his comrade. Seeing that the captain also had the same intention, there was a chance. "Captain Xia, we have to give it a push. I bet that after cleaning the toilet for a month, that beautiful photographer will definitely have a good impression of V8. But V8, this fellow, could even say that there are differences between men and men and women should not touch each other in the car." It was easy to daydream that he would chase after the beautiful photographer. In the darkness, Xia Jinyuan narrowed his eyes like a scheming traitor. After thinking for a while, he said to G3 with a smile, "It's easy for a woman to chase after a man. Can Qining get him?" "TSK." Xia Jinyuan felt a pain in his back and immediately changed his words. "Whether she can get V8 or not depends on our help. Ask Qining for her opinion first. If it's interesting, everything will be easy." Yi Qian, who was standing on his back, calmly retracted his claws. "Go ahead. Ask her everything before she leaves. If there's a chance, we'll continue. If there's no chance, then forget it." Xia Jinyuan, who was rubbing his back where he was pinched, waved his hand and gestured for his comrade to do what he was supposed to do. The dark G3 and T6 combatants did not see his movements clearly. They relied on their minds to understand his movements and went about their own business. Qining had been sitting alone, and no one was within a meter of her. She sat on the ground with her back against the uneven surface of the rock, and her gaze fell on the edge of the sunken hole. There, she could see two figures, and one of them was the man she had been looking for a long time. At this moment, Qining was no longer as bold and unrestrained as before. Her gaze was as calm as the moonlight, faint, clear, and suffused with a gentle glow. Now that she had calmed down, she was no longer surprised. Qin Ing was like a unique painting that had been left behind in the long river of time. No one knew what she was thinking. They just sat there quietly and watched quietly, not even having the heart to disturb her. Occasionally, her eyes would move slightly, and a trace of blazing fire could be seen splashing out from the depths of her pupils. The light that burst out in an instant seemed to be able to illuminate everything. For a long time, Qin Ing did not change her posture. She maintained a posture where she could look straight outside without moving, as if she was meditating. Someone approached, and the source of heat caused Qin Ing to retract her gaze. She turned her neck slightly to look at the approaching figure. After confirming that the figure was walking towards her, Qin Ing got up. Chapter 45-45. G3 reached out his hand with a smile and introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Shulin's vice captain. Please forgive me for my previous offense." He took the initiative to talk to her and said the name of the person she liked. Did they see something? If they really saw something. Qin Ing reached out her hand and smiled. "Hello, I'm Qin Ing. You've already apologized to me several times, and I haven't been at ease for a long time. I have to thank you for bringing me along. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'd be flying freely in the air with a pile of equipment, waiting for a free fall." Generous and decent, humorous and witty, and with the handsomeness of a woman, G3 was more determined to make the two of them together. That's good. We were afraid that you would mind. Now, I can tell Shulin that you're not angry. You can rest assured. I'm the one who should apologize. I overreacted and forced him to almost jump out of the car. Qin Ing smiled humorously. I wanted to say a few words to him, but he didn't give me a chance at all. Before the vice captain came, I had been thinking about how to apologize to him. Those two don't have to apologize anymore. They didn't take it to heart. Miss Qin, I have a question that I need to ask. G3, who was laughing, suddenly changed the topic and became particularly serious in an instant. Please answer me truthfully, Miss Qin. It's here. Qin Ing, who had calmed down, nodded. Please ask. Miss Qin, do you know Shulin? We met once 5 years ago. I know him, but he doesn't know me. I can't say that I know him. It's just that he appeared in my camera at that time. In the camera? When? What was V8 doing at that time? G3's eyes changed, but his voice was still as usual. Miss Qin, were you also taking photos of the scenery at that time? No, on the battlefield. I took photos of him in Nilwa. Don't worry, I was a photographer for the Military Times at that time. Qin Ing could feel the change in G3. Without needing G3 to ask in detail, she took the initiative to explain it clearly. At that time, I wanted the accompanying war reporters to follow closely and interview the young soldier, who had half his face covered in blood but had a fearless gaze. In the end, recalling that scene, Qin Ing, whose heart was still throbbing, once again looked at the figure standing in front of her as straight as a spear. Her voice softened. In the end, from the time I pressed the shutter to the time I turned my head, it was at most 10 seconds before he disappeared from my camera. So, I kind of know him, but I also don't know him. Although his photo has been saved in my computer for 5 years, I didn't know his name until today. I'm sorry, but I want to know his full name. Is it convenient for you to tell me? To think that there was such a connection. G3 laughed. Shulin's surname is Yang Shulin. Miss Qin, please remember this. After 5 years, I didn't expect Miss Qin to be able to recognize Shulin at a glance. I have to say that Miss Qin is very good at recognizing people. Recognizing people. These 2 words were a little interesting. Qin Ing quite agreed and smiled. Although 5 years have passed, to me, it's no different from what happened 5 days ago. Otherwise, how could I recognize him at a glance? Meeting again after 5 years, I couldn't restrain myself in a moment of excitement. After thinking about it, it was very awkward. Deputy Captain, please enlighten Shulin. As for me, I can't remember what I did at that time. I hope Shulin won't have a psychological shadow. Of course. From what Miss Chin means, you still want to contact Shulin in the future. What do you think, Deputy Captain? You don't really think that I have a good memory, do you? No, my memory is actually very bad. Chapter 45-46. Haha, okay. We'll definitely keep in touch. However, Shulin is very introverted and has never had a girlfriend before. He's also quite innocent, so I'm afraid he might make Miss Chin angry in some aspects. Please forgive him. I, Qining, am really good at nothing, but I'm patient and have a little passion for pursuing life. That's great. I think Miss Chin will definitely become good friends with Shulin. G3 was smiling so widely that the corners of his mouth almost reached his ears. Of course, I'll try my best to make Shulin accept me as a female friend. Qining also smiled and replied, after all, it's my first time taking the initiative to contact a man. He was indeed innocent and had never had a girlfriend before. It was fine if he was introverted, but everything was not a problem when he met Qining. After the exchange, both parties were very happy. It didn't sound like they would become boyfriend and girlfriend in the future. Qining also didn't say that she liked V8 for 5 years. G3 also didn't ask Qining to take the initiative to attack V8. They didn't say a word, but both of them knew the meaning behind the words. The highest level of speaking was that it seemed to be talking about something unrelated, but they could understand the true meaning behind it. As for V8, he didn't know that he had been sold out by his comrade to Qining. He stood there motionlessly and carried out his sentry duty. The power of the sandstorm outside weakened bit by bit. The night sky covered by yellow dust gradually became clear and bright. The bright stars twinkled, and the weak starlight illuminated the entire Gobi Desert. Qining still sat there and continued to watch while waiting for V8 to finish his sentry duty. She held a photo in her hand that had time to develop. Before she left, she would give the photo to him with her contact information attached. After completing the mission, G3 smiled and said to Xia Jinyuan, "The relationship 5 years ago really exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect that our V8 would be searched for by a beauty for 5 years. Captain Xia, there's hope. At present, there is indeed hope. Let's see how it develops next. Did you remind Qining to take the initiative? It's difficult for V8 to take the initiative." Xia Jinyuan was also very happy. As the team leader, he also took on the role of matchmaker, parent, and so on. He shouldered the heavy responsibility of solving the problems of all the bachelors in the team. Alas, there was still a long way to go. When Qining left, the team realized that she had a satellite phone. The person who picked her up was so anxious that he almost contacted the Qin family. Fortunately, the call was connected in the end, and he was relieved to know that she was safe. The team turned on a high-power jammer, and even the satellite communications were jammed by Han Zheng. Only then did Qining realize that the person who picked her up was about to go crazy. If she hadn't taken out the satellite phone, the signal interference would have continued. "I have a letter of apology for your vice-captain. I hope you can take a good look at it after the training. I'm sorry about what happened in the car. Please forgive me for scaring you. If you can't forgive me now, I hope you can forgive me for the sake of my apology letter. Yang Shulin, my name is Qining. Qin as in the state of Qin, Ing as in cherry blossoms. I'm an independent woman who carries camera equipment on her back. There's still a long way to go. We'll meet again." Before leaving, Qining stood in front of V8, who had finished his sentry duty, and introduced herself solemnly. At the same time, she shocked V8 again. She. How did she know his name? Who told her? There was still a long way to go. Would they meet again? Why did he suddenly feel like he was a little white rabbit being targeted? Chapter 45-47. You. Then, V8, who usually talked about finding a girlfriend from time to time, was completely at a loss for words. He stuttered so much that he could not say a word. Qining did not give him a chance to speak either. She carried her large backpack that was about half the height of a person, waved her hand, and slid all the way down from the top of the cave. The moonlight was bright and the stars were clear. V8 Yang Shulin saw the young cameraman who made him helpless slide all the way down with her large backpack. Then, she suddenly turned around. He was so shocked that he subconsciously shrank back. He did not want her to see him standing there foolishly and looking at her. Qining smiled. This innocent man was still hiding. Stop hiding. Your vice-captain has already sold you to me. Goodbye. Qining, who had turned around, put her hands by her mouth and shouted up, Remember, there's still a long way to go. You will become my man sooner or later. Of course, she could not say that out loud. V8 wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He could not take it, he could not take it. The demons in the mountains probably looked like her. Sigh. A faint sigh suddenly came from behind him. V8 was so shocked that he turned around abruptly and let out a cry of surprise before shrinking back again. Logically speaking, you should send her off. I didn't expect her people to locate us here directly. It's not convenient for us to show up, so we can only let her go alone. I'll let you send her off next time if there's a chance. T6, who had walked over at some point, shook his head regretfully. Look at her. She's carrying a backpack that's half the height of a person, and it's almost as heavy as her. I'm really worried that she'll collapse one day. What about you? Are you worried? Then you should be worried. V8, who was frightened, glared at his comrade angrily. He shook his arms and walked inside. He was hungry and needed to eat something to fill his stomach. As for the apology letter that Qining mentioned, V8 did not ask G3, and G3 did not mention it again either. He only took it out when he returned to the army after training. After Qining left, the 46 Special Forces soldiers had dinner and all of them set up camp to rest for the night. They gathered at 4 o'clock the next morning and headed deep into the Gobi Desert. Although the 30 Special Forces soldiers had successfully carried out 2 missions, they were not red level. When they entered the Gobi Desert, the 46 Special Forces soldiers of the Snowfield Brigade split into the red and blue teams. Yi Qian of the red team joined the 30 Special Forces soldiers to fight against the 16 veterans of the blue team who were disguised as criminals. They would occasionally attack. Fighting against 16 veterans in the Gobi Desert was a huge challenge for the 30 Special Forces soldiers. On the first day, 5 Special Forces soldiers were killed by the veterans. On the second day, another 4 were killed. On the 10th day, 6 of the veterans were killed and 16 of the red team were killed. More than half of them were killed. The Gobi Desert was very hot during the day and very cold at night. The 46 Special Forces soldiers trained day after day in this extremely harsh environment. On the 20th day, everyone had lost at least 5 kilograms. Their cheeks were sunken, but their eyes were sharper with each passing day. On the 30th day, the skin that had peeled from the sun started to peel again after much difficulty. Even Yi Qian was no exception. Sunburn was not a normal pain. At night, it was like being pricked by countless needles. It was a burning pain. No one complained and no one quit. They persevered until the end of the training. Yi Qian was the same as the male soldiers. She suffered the same kind of pain as the male soldiers. When she was kidnapped, she experienced a dagger slit her neck. In the end, she was rescued by her comrades from the red team. Chapter 45-48. From the capture of Yi Qian to the successful rescue, it could be said that this was the best counterattack the 30 Special Forces had ever made against the veterans. Yi Qian finally understood why the veterans were so silent in the Gobi Desert that was full of coarse sand and gravel, while the red team would make rustling sounds no matter how light their footsteps were. The solution was simple. Every time before a sneak attack, they would use sterile gauze to pad the soles of their feet and wrap the outside of their feet with a backpack strap. Everywhere they went, they would be as silent as a cat. The veterans would never tell the red team in advance about these survival skills. Even Yi Qian didn't know. The red team had to go into the Gobi Desert for training and figure it out themselves. This training was the red team's largest and longest field training. The shooting of live and blank bullets made the red team's special forces walk on the line of death almost every day. The veterans who pretended to be fugitives really thought of themselves as fierce, ruthless, and criminals who were running for their lives. Criminals who attacked for their lives would never be able to imagine how crazy they could be. The red team's special forces were tense every day and didn't dare to relax for even a moment. Everyone was involved in this training that had a high mortality rate. During the training, all kinds of injuries emerged. After a month, both the red team and the blue team were injured. The most serious injury was to his calf from a sharp gravel cut so deep that his bone could be seen. Even so, as long as he could stand up, the training continued. Yi Qian's back was also hit hard once. He jumped down and stumbled, then fell onto a rock and hit his chest. His organs seemed to have been displaced. He felt a metallic taste in his throat. He stood there for at least 5 minutes before he dared to move his body slowly. She was afraid of injuring her spine. It wasn't like the Snowfield Brigade didn't injure their spines during training. The harsh and brutal training didn't even have any humanity. Injuries were common. As the captain, Xia Jinyuan treated everyone equally during training. Yi Qian was his soldier. He treated Yi Qian the same way he treated the male soldiers. He also told the veterans to treat him the same. The veterans didn't treat Yi Qian differently. She was a soldier, and a soldier should act like a soldier. As for her being the captain's girlfriend, that was life, not training. At the end of the 43 days of training, everyone's training uniforms were all worn out, and there was an indescribable smell. The Gobi Desert lacked water, and bathing was a luxury. When the military aviation team sent a helicopter to pick them up, the two captains were shocked. Their military aviation team's training was harsh enough. They never thought that compared to this brother team, who was even more of a refugee than a refugee, the difference was like heaven and earth. From now on, you can't say that our regiment is the toughest. Looking at the refugees walking over, the co-pilot expressed the shock in his heart to the captain in a low voice. Just as the sun was setting in the west, a red sun fell into the horizon at the end of the Gobi Desert. A group of refugees walked through the desolate mountains and lined up neatly with heavy rifles in their arms. One by one, they walked towards the helicopter that would take them out of the depths of the Gobi Desert. Although their clothes were ragged, they walked like sharp swords that could be cut by the wind. When they returned from the Gobi Desert, even if they arranged for the similarly remote military aviation team to reorganize, it was still the same as entering the city. 6 out of the 46 people got off the helicopter to look after the equipment. The remaining 40 people all rushed into the collective shower and only came out after scrubbing half a bar of soap. When they got off the helicopter, Xia Jinyuan pulled Yi Qian to the side, took off her helmet, and stared at her face carefully. Yi Qian was confused by his stare. "What are you looking at?" Chapter 45-49. Nothing much. I just wanted to tell you that if you want to visit the military aviation regiment tomorrow, you'd better wear sunglasses. Xia Jinyuan, who was trying hard to hold back his laughter, put on Yi Qian's helmet again and put on the black goggles. He patted her shoulder and smiled. "You're a family member in a single room. Tidy yourself up." Yi Qian seemed to understand something and her face turned hot. "Hurry up and leave." She glared at him and left as if she was running away. Although they were boyfriend and girlfriend, but because they were boyfriend and girlfriend, even if she didn't pay much attention to her appearance, she was still very embarrassed at this moment. She had to clean herself up. Xia Jinyuan's low laughter came from behind. He said, "I like it no matter how ugly it is. I like it very much. A husband doesn't dislike his wife for being ugly, silly." That doting tone made Yi Qian's legs feel like they were on fire wheels, and she ran even faster. Yen Er's mischievous young lieutenant colonel laughed even louder, causing the other comrades to stare at him. When they saw Yi Qian running away in front of them, their gazes instantly turned into nine-toothed rakes. "What are you looking at? You're even more infuriating. Go go go, stay away from him. Training is over. It's time for us to be depressed." "Ha ha ha, no matter how depressed we are, it won't last for more than 12 hours. Yi Qian has to go back to school tomorrow." "Oh, that's true. Don't be envious. We'll give you a surprise later." G3 pulled V8 over. "A huge surprise is waiting for you. Wash up and we'll have a good chat." V8 didn't react. He snorted softly and said in disbelief, "Usually, the biggest surprises in the team are missions, and free overseas trips for a few days." G3 stared at V8 as if he was a monster. He slapped the back of his head in disappointment. "If you don't seize the opportunity this time, I'll cut you up." His cold gaze swept across V8's lower body. V8. He walked even faster. Yi Qian, who was walking at the front, did not feel the gaze of the nine-toothed iron rake. She was a female soldier, and had been arranged to stay in the family quarters of the Military Aviation Regiment. Although it was called a building, it was actually the top floor of the barracks. The Military Aviation Regiment was too remote, and the family rooms that were separated out were basically empty all year round. In the clean single room, Yi Qian was afraid that his backpack would get dirty, so he put it on the floor and twisted the edges of the sealed bag that he had specially kept for his physical fitness shorts. He rushed into the bathroom as fast as he could. "Let's wash up first before taking out the clothes." When the male soldiers walked out of the shower, Yi Qian was still working hard. He scrubbed until his skin turned red, until a piece of soap was so small that he could hold it in his hand. Only then did he turn off the shower. After she put on her clothes and stood in front of the mirror, Yi Qian, who usually didn't dress up, thought for the first time that she should buy some foundation to lighten her complexion. In the mirror, even though Yi Qian's skin was the type that was hard to tan, he was not spared this time. There were 3 colors on his face, skin and skin. There was a medium color on his forehead, the purest color from the bridge of his nose to the top of his eyebrows, and a dark color below the bridge of his nose to his chin. Looking at himself in the mirror, Yi Qian couldn't help but twitch his mouth. She still had to go to another school for military training when she went back. Could she go with this appearance that made even him want to laugh? "Little Yi, you're the flower of our military academy. Even if you go to another school, you'll still be a beautiful school flower. Let the students from another school see how beautiful our school's flower is." Thinking about the conversation with the director and looking at himself in the mirror, Yi Qian rubbed his forehead with a headache. Going with this appearance wouldn't be a plus, but a minus. She should be at the level of a beggar. Chapter 45-50. Staring at herself in the mirror, Yi Qian couldn't bear to look straight at herself. What should she do? How should she explain to the director? No wonder Xia Jinyuan told her to wear sunglasses before going out. With her current appearance, sunglasses would become an indispensable concealer. But he needed sunglasses to do it. Not only did she need sunglasses, but she also needed square sunglasses like goggles. But she didn't have anything. After looking for a while, Yi Qian walked out of the shower helplessly. Without sunglasses, she could only walk out like this. Fortunately, she didn't need to gather. Fortunately, she could rest after washing up. As for the tour, Forget it, she didn't want to look anymore. She believed that she would have the opportunity to visit the tour in the future and see the various military models up close. It was already dark outside. At 10:30 p.m., the tour group didn't start training again. All the soldiers returned to their dormitories to start studying before going to bed. The camp area was quiet. In the quiet night, the Milky Way was like a white ribbon. The sky was like an arc that covered the entire earth. Yi Qian stood under the sunlight in the laundry pool and listened to the summer insects chirping. She used half a bag of detergent to wash all the clothes until they were fragrant before hanging them up. Before going to bed, she went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The funny tricolored dividing line made her close her eyes and apply the aloe vera ointment prepared by the tour group. Even her eyes were burning. She didn't even go down to eat dinner. She ate a few biscuits and drank a few glasses of water. Her body was in bed for less than a minute, and her breathing was already long. She couldn't take 43 days of high-intensity training. The male soldiers didn't send anyone to wake Yi Qian up. Since they were all so tired, they could just sleep well if they wanted to. The male soldiers in the room with 6 people were almost all asleep, except for the captain and deputy captain. The street lights in the tour group's camp area weren't all turned on. Some areas were directly turned off. Xia Jinyuan and G3 walked out of the dormitory and went to the area where the lights were not turned on. They talked about some things that happened during the 43 days of training. The two of them summarized it first and went back to submit a report to Major General Yang. After talking about training matters, they chatted with V8. V8 didn't take G3's words to heart at all. He didn't even eat dinner and was sleeping soundly at this moment. No huge surprise could compare to a good sleep. He was too tired, both physically and mentally. He really didn't have the energy to accept this huge surprise. G3, who had been sleeping for a long time but forced himself to stay awake, yawned and rubbed his sore temples. He sighed and said, "Now we're counting on Miss Qin to take the initiative. If we count on V8, as you said, we'll probably stay where we are for the rest of our lives." We agreed to wash up and talk at night, but he slept well when I went to him after I hung up the clothes. He said that he wanted to find a girlfriend, but when there was really a chance, he acted as if nothing had happened. He didn't care at all and instead worried about them. Xia Jinyuan was also very sleepy, and his eyelids were already drooping. When he heard this, he chuckled faintly and said, "He's just saying that. If you really ask him to look for her, you'll see if he will. If you point a gun at his head, he might not be willing to take a step forward. Has this guy changed, or has he not changed completely? His parents are too restrictive, so he has long lost his pursuit of life. Otherwise, why would he rather stay in the army for training than return to his normal life? Don't be too anxious. I know a little about Qin. She's a woman that even Mrs. Qin can't do anything about. Since she has been looking for V8 for 5 years, she won't let go until she gets him. Tell Qin about V8 in private. Don't worry about his family background. V8's family background is not bad. Although it can't be compared to the Qin family, it's still well known locally. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so strict with V8 since she was young. It was not for anything else but to support her family background. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.